Welcome back to Right Side Broadcasting Network. I'm Robert McNeely. We're in the second broadcast now of a historic day in the United States of America, specifically Anchorage, Alaska, where it is 12:30 in the afternoon, 4:30 on the East Coast. Happy Friday. Good early evening and afternoon to the United States of America and our president, Donald Trump, meeting with the Russian Federation President Vladimir Putin, holding this peace pursuit, as you see there at the backdrop, of pursuing peace. This was a meeting that was requested by Vladimir Putin and President Trump agreeing to that, but stating that it should be on American soil, a perfect halfway point in the former Russian territory known as Alaska. Once Seward's Folly, as the Secretary of State William Seward under President Abraham Lincoln acquiring this land for 2 cents per acre, turning out to be not a folly, but rather one of the smartest moves ever made, perhaps the most important purchase after that of the Louisiana Purchase to create this amazing nation that we now know as 50 states, 6 territories, and global influence, back-to-back World War champs and winners of the Cold War, now pursuing this peace that will hopefully be lasting between Russia and Ukraine, because we know the Otto Penn administration, they dropped the ball on this. And if President Trump would have been in office during that period of time, Vladimir Putin would not have invaded the Ukraine. That is simply fact at this point. We know after 3.5 years, now over 1 million people dead as a result, Russian and Ukrainian. Wonderful traditions, beautiful people, and very much like traditional Americans, something they should not have gone through. But nevertheless, we're at that point right now as these two leaders discuss the pursuit of that peace. We anticipate that that could be held at 7:30 Eastern tonight or earlier. So stand by as Vladimir Putin, Donald Trump meeting together right now to discuss these terms. Secretary of State Marco Rubio is on hand, as well as Steve Witkoff, who has helped negotiate the peace and transfer of prisoners from Russia. If you remember, American citizens coming home earlier this year as a result of being imprisoned unjustly in Russia. And that's thanks to the negotiation skills of Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, translators there as well as their counterparts from the Russian Federation. So stay tuned for all of that information, as well as a press gaggle. President Trump having his trip from Joint Base Andrews outside of D.C. in Maryland to J-Bear in Anchorage, Alaska, roughly a 7.5-hour trip. And we'll have that press gaggle for you, as well as my recent interview with Michael Kunzler, the co-owner of a great sponsor here on Right Side Broadcasting Network that is known as All Family Pharmacy, an organization fighting hard against those PBMs and the insurance companies and in some cases doctors that simply don't want you to have access to life-saving medication, whether it's against bacterial infections, viral infections, whatever that might be. Good to have with you on the road. allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN and at home as well, as we cover all of this historic day in the 49th state that came into the Union after being a territory in 1959, and a place that's rather special to me because it granted me the opportunity to cover local politics in Anchorage, Alaska. And it was exciting. And it's fun to share with people what Alaska is like. Well, first and foremost, if you're a hunter and a fisherman or someone who just loves the great outdoors, you cannot miss Alaska. And it's great any time of year, but especially now because of the long summers, and especially here in the southeast where it gets a bit hot and humid during the summertime, a great escape. As the high today, right now it's around 52 degrees and overcast, so you need a light jacket or even a heavy jacket, depending what time of year it is in Alaska and these long summers they have there. Sun setting tonight around 10:45 their time, and you need blackout curtains to live there sometimes in the summer, but the opposite happens in the winter with very little sunlight. It's an amazing place. God's beauty on display in Alaska as this diplomatic pursuit of peace taking place right now between the leadership of the United States and that of the Russian Federation. Let's hear what President Trump had to say earlier via Air Force One with the press pool on board from Washington, D.C. to Anchorage, Alaska earlier today.
There's nothing set in stone. I want certain things. I want to see a ceasefire. This is not to do with Europe. Europe's not telling me what to do. But they're going to be involved in the process, obviously, as will Zelensky. But I want to see a ceasefire rapidly. I don't know if it's going to be today, but I'm not going to be happy if it's not today. Everyone said it can't be today, but I'm just saying I want the killing to stop. I'm in this to stop the killing. You know, we're not putting up any money. We're making money. They're buying our weapons, and we're sending them to NATO, and NATO's sending us big, beautiful checks. But I don't care about that. I care about, it was a big factor when Biden spent $350 million and got nothing. But what I do care about is they lost last week 7,011 people were lost, almost all soldiers. 36 people in a town which got hit by a missile. But over 7,000 soldiers. It's crazy.
Can you describe a little bit, Mr. President, because I know you've had a lot of phone calls with President Putin. What's the difference in a face-to-face, in-person meeting?
No different. Look, he's a smart guy. Been doing it for a long time, but so have I. Been doing it for a long time. And here we are, we're president. And that was much more difficult than what I'm doing today, believe me. So, we get along. There's a good respect level on both sides, and I think, something's going to come of it. I noticed he's bringing a lot of business people from Russia, and that's good. I like that because they want to do business, but they're not doing business until we get the war settled.
Are you going to talk about this?
They need business. We have the hottest country on earth. We have the hottest economy on earth. We have the hottest country. We just set a new stock market record again. We have hundreds of billions of dollars flowing in from tariffs. We're the hottest country. We were a dead country, but dead like doornails, a dead country. 1 year ago, we were dead as a doornail. And now we have the hottest country. And he wants a piece of that because his country is not hot economically. In fact, it's the opposite. And China's not doing well economically, but look, I want everybody to do well. The war's going to stop and the killing's going to stop.
Mr. President, what do you mean by secure consequences? Back to take questions. We saw that Russia continued its violence into Ukraine last night, launching even more drones. What did you make of that?
Well, I think they're trying to negotiate. He's trying to set a stage. I mean, in his mind, that helps him make a better deal. It actually hurts him. But in his mind, that helps him make a better deal if they can continue the killing. Maybe it's a part of the world. Maybe it's just his fabric, his genes, his genetics. But he thinks that makes him, gives him strength in negotiating. I think it hurts him, but I'll be talking to him about it.
And it's on the table for discussions today, Mr. President. Are the territorial swaps on the table? Will you be discussing that?
They'll be discussed, but I've got to let Ukraine make that decision. And I think they'll make a proper decision. But I'm not here to negotiate for Ukraine. I'm here to get them at a table, and I think you have two sides. Look, Vladimir Putin wanted to take all of Ukraine. If I wasn't president, he would right now be taking all of Ukraine. But he's not going to do it.
Mr. President, what did you mean?
Just one thing. What about
Don't underestimate that either.
The possibility of the United States providing security guarantees to Ukraine?
Maybe. Along with Europe and other countries. Not in the form of NATO, because that's not going to, there are certain things that aren't going to happen. But, along with Europe, there's a possibility of that.
You mentioned the number of business people that President Putin is bringing along. Is that something that you want to discuss with President Putin at this meeting?
Yeah, if we make progress, I would discuss it, because that's one of the things that they would like. They'd like to get a piece of what I built in terms of the economy. Just so you know, we were a dead country with our economy. He wouldn't be interested. He wouldn't have been interested a year ago with the Biden economy. But he is interested in the Trump economy because we're doing. Wait till you see when those factories start opening up. We have hundreds of factories all over the country, and that includes auto factories, AI factories, and every other. They're all coming in because they want to beat the tariffs. Because if they open here, they don't have to pay tariffs. If they don't open here, they have to pay, in some cases, 200%, 300%. I haven't even set some of the tariffs yet. I'll be setting tariffs next week and the week after on steel and on, I would say, chips.
Steel higher than
Chips and semiconductors. we'll be setting sometime next week after.
What rate are you looking at? What rate?
Well, I'm going to have a rate that is going to be lower at the beginning. Then that gives them a chance to come in and build, and very high after a certain period of time. And if they don't build here, they have to pay a very high tariff, which doesn't work, so they'll come and build.
Mr. President, you had said earlier.
Such a gentleman.
He didn't do that with me.
Isn't he a gentleman? He's a nice.
He's helping me out.
He's a very nice. He's one of the few nice ones. Yes.
You had said earlier this week that Putin would face severe consequences if you get the sense from him that he's not interested. What do you mean by that?
Economically severe. Yes, it will be very severe. I'm not doing this for my health. Okay, I don't need it. I'd like to focus on our country, but I'm doing this to save a lot of lives. Yeah, very severe. Thank you very much, everybody.
And that was President Trump en route to Anchorage, Alaska from Joint Base Andrews outside of Washington, D.C. And you see there a live look at or towards Mount McKinley. And that's about a 4-hour drive from the municipality of Anchorage, Alaska into the Cook Inlet. And a fun part of that, sometimes you can actually see beluga whales coming into the inlet, and sometimes they actually get lost in there and have to be helped redirected by cargo ships like that, where they'll actually follow them back out. And it's an amazing sight to see just the amount of nature and beauty, God's creation in Alaska. I used to run up and down that area there, which is a beautiful part of South Anchorage, right on that Cook Inlet, looking out towards the beautiful Mount McKinley. Now, thank you to our sponsors here on Right Side Broadcasting Network as we look towards pursuing peace in America and throughout the world under this president. Sometimes that paper money does not work for you. So Monetary Gold is your go-to, getting that complimentary presidential gold guide with President Trump's face right on the front. Call now, do not delay, 800-476-7790. Ask how you can eliminate your annual IRA fees for life. RSBN4thegold.com. Now, Bank of America just announced the United States dollar is on the verge of collapse. Think about your savings, your retirement, everything you've worked so hard for going bye-bye. Your paycheck, all of it. And faster than ever with it losing its potential value. But history teaches us when paper money fails, when inflation skyrockets regarding of who's leading the charge, precious metals win. Gold and silver have dominated human history for 5,000 years. And that's why now is the time to go with Monterey Gold for wealth, security, preservation. Call immediately to discover how you can eliminate those IRA fees. RSBNforthegold.com, 800-476-7790. Also, thank you to Kalshi.com/RSBN. What will President Trump say during the press conference? Let's get those trades going, because we know that President Trump and President Putin approximately had a handshake of 10 seconds. So for the 71% of you who made the trade and the bet on 3 seconds, you have some extra cash in your coffers. Will they talk about Zelensky, NATO, nuclear? Will any of that come up? Make those trades right now, and it's live in real time. That's the website that's going on with all of these different questions. And who's there with President Trump? Well, it's Secretary of State Marco Rubio and also Steve Witkoff, the special envoy, with their Russian counterparts and translators. So a various array of questions on this extraordinarily historic day, August 15th, 2025. Also, the 80th anniversary of the Victory over Japan Day. So 80 years ago today, a huge celebration for the United States as it defeated officially the Empire of Japan. And we could see peace and the end of the Ukrainian war potentially 80 years later on this August 15th. Thank you for tuning into Right Side Broadcasting Network at 4:45 Eastern. It's 12:45 in Anchorage, Alaska. I had a great interview with our friends over at All Family Pharmacy just yesterday. Michael Kunzler, the co-owner, we went in depth on a number of questions regarding this amazing online pharmacy that is fighting for you to get you those life-saving viral and bacterial medications to curb what might be out there during the summer months. So you want to stock up that medicine cabinet. You want to take these 200 essential medications, even antibiotics, on the road with you in your summer vacations as we get close to Labor Day and football season. It's almost fall in America, so make sure you can protect yourself as we get into these busy months leading up to the holidays. Here's our exclusive interview with Michael Kunzler of All Family Pharmacy. Welcome back to RSBN. Michael Kunzler, the co-owner of All Family Pharmacy, a great organization, an online pharmacy truly saving lives, and it has been getting national attention lately. Why is that, Michael? What sets your pharmacy apart, and why do you think so many people are turning to allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN for their medical needs?
I think it bases around medical freedom. Medical freedom is what we push, and we're big advocates of it. We allow the patient to come to us for what their needs are. We don't tell them exactly what they need. We just listen and we provide as needed. As needed meaning, is it medically necessary? Is it something that's safe and effective for them? So I believe that medical freedom plays a big part in why we become so popular and why we're going to continue to push to be obviously America's #1 pharmacy, because we want to be able to let people choose the medications they want at the end of the day. And, the biggest ones right now are the ones they shut down during COVID, and that's ivermectin and methylene blue and hydroxychloroquine and mebendazole and all the stuff that are, generics that have been around for ages and they've deemed to be safe and effective. But all of a sudden, 2020, 2021 rolls around and they're horse dewormers. So, that's what we're here for. We're here for the American people.
And that's why All Family Pharmacy is truly becoming the most trusted pharmacy in America, whether it is a standalone or the online apparatus, and most people going online now. So tell us why methylene blue has been around for more than a century, and what are we seeing in the interest in it today, especially for both brain health and mitochondrial support, something that people might not think about, that cellular support that's so crucial to our energy source.
Methylene blue is, and we could thank RFK Jr. about methylene blue. He's one of the biggest advocates for it. Obviously, prior to his term, now that he's in the government, he can't really tote too much about medications, but it enhances your cognitive ability, neuroprotection properties, anti-aging, and energy stamina. Like you said, supports your brain health and it boosts the mitochondria function. We're seeing a lot of great data on it on our end. We're reading a lot of trials that are going on with methylene blue. One specific is in the United Kingdom, and that one's based around Parkinson's. And they're actually taking the active ingredient out of methylene blue. Technically, they're removing the blue from the medication itself, and it's in a lower dose form, and they're pushing it for Parkinson's, and they're seeing some good data taken on its own. So we're always going to be in the niche of trying to find drugs that are safe and effective, that are very economically efficient or cheap to give the patients the ability to try. And methylene blue is at the top of our list. That's something I like taking, something that a lot of our people here like taking. We have a lot of patients on it for cancer support, mitochondria or brain function support. So it's one of the biggest and newest drugs out there for, the everyday people to try. And you can come to All Family Pharmacy. We'll get you in touch with the doctor. Not everybody can take it. But again, that's why we have physicians who overlook these profiles, who talk to patients directly to find out who is a candidate and who isn't. So, it's all about safety and effectiveness here at All Family Pharmacy.
And can you walk us through that process? Say if someone comes to you without that doctor and without insurance, how can they get that expert advice on just what prescriptions are correct to use for their own health?
Yeah, so we have a lot of knowledgeable pharmacists here. We have technicians, but technicians can't answer a lot of these medical questions. They'll go right to a pharmacist, or we have individuals like myself and a couple others here that work directly with the doctors and working out these protocols. So we have a lot of information on our end, and that strictly comes from the top. And we try to share as much as we can when it's necessary. So when you come to All Family Pharmacy, you're going to get education on these medications. You're going to learn how to use them in a safe and effective way, which we believe is the #1 priority. So you go to the website, take a look at the medications you want. Traditionally, most of our patients already know what they're on. They have their conversations with their doctor. Their doctor no longer wants to give them too much information, primarily because their insurance doesn't want to pay them as much anymore. So they've got to double the amount of patients to make the same amount of money now. And so they don't have time to talk to the doctor. And now they come to us, and we're going to give them the time and day to have that conversation. We're going to, provide them with up to a 1-year supply, which is, legality wise, what we're allowed to do, ethically as well. We're big on ethics, and we're going to get them the medication. We're going to get them in touch with a doctor. We're going to have them fill out the medical forms. That's going to go over all of the questions and allergies. And, that goes through the doctor. Then it goes through our pharmacist. So everything that leaves our door, we know that it's safe and effective and it's the right fit for that patient.
Now, if I'm not mistaken as well, NAD Plus is also an anti-aging property that is on the market and that you are providing. Why do they call it the fuel for life and really reversing what can be damage at the cellular level?
Yeah, NAD Plus is by far one of my favorites. It is called the fuel for life because it's a molecule that's in every cell in your body. It is what provides the energy for those cells to run. When you have that energy, you truly feel it on a mental note and on a physical note. It's something we've been encouraging our patients to take or to try out. It is a supplement. Everything that we do under a doctor's supervision. So we want to make sure that you're, again, the right fit for these supplements, these medications. It's a natural occurring substance in your body. So no big pharmaceutical company is going to touch it because they can't patent it, meaning they can't make money on it. Right? That leaves the little guys like us to provide the benefits for you. And, that's what we're a big proponent of is finding these drugs that we fit are safe and effective for you. And they're cheap. They're not expensive. You're not buying, Ozempic and Mounjaro. That's $1,200 to $1,500 a month. It's not like that. And so we're big proponents on that. It does also help with dietary, but again, it's got the anti-aging. As we get older, our NAD levels decline. Just like your hormones decline as a man or a woman. These are things that are just biological in us. And so increasing your NAD levels does tend to make you feel younger, look younger, act younger. Imagine waking up every day and you have a battery. You look at the battery percentage and it's 50%. 4 p.m., 5 p.m. rolls around, you're ready for bed. Right now, imagine waking up and that battery is 80, 90%. You're going to go all day. No stops. And that's what NAD is. It tops off the battery of life every day and all day. And we have a lot of testimonials, whether it's ourselves, it's our patients, medical professionals in the industry. It's a lot of data we've collected, and that is why we're big proponents. We're only big proponents on safe and effective medications. We're not here to sell you something that's not going to help you.
And Michael, what is NAD specifically? Is it coming from a specific gland, and how does that fuel you? Is it coming from the brain specifically? I know of this cellular level production, but for those not familiar, perhaps what is NAD production and the nitty gritty on why that's important to have?
It's a molecule that's within the cell. It's basically the powerhouse of the mitochondria. It's what produces ATP, which is cellular energy. When I was younger and I was in college and I was weightlifting every day and exercising and playing sports, we thought of it as creatine was our ATP. It was our energy that gave us the strength in our muscles to push that extra rep, to get past that wall. NAD plus is far beyond that. It's a coenzyme in our body. It's a molecule within the cell that actually creates energy. So when you take NAD and you get back to those levels like we had when we were 18 and 21 years old, you feel it. You feel the energy, you feel the rush, and then it becomes a stabilized energy source. It's not like caffeine where it's a quick stimulant and then you got these massive headaches and anxiety crashes. It's true, real energy stabilized throughout the course of the day. And methylene blue is very similar, but methylene blue is more directed towards the mind, killing brain fog, helping with memory and support. One of the, I was just looking on drugs.com. They had a pretty unique trials on there. They were talking about within the first hour of taking methylene blue, people were reporting about a 7% increase in memory. And so this is why they're looking at it for Parkinson's. They're looking at it for dementia and Alzheimer's as a possibility of, not curing it, but preventing it, protecting against it. These are things that we also look at our level, and we're going to encourage those who are, getting close to those ages where, we have to start having the conversation about Parkinson's and Alzheimer's and dementia. I've had relatives who passed away from dementia, and it's sad to watch. So that's what we're here for.
Now, your patients diving into these amazing options and truly life-giving, as you've mentioned here, Michael, but some going the traditional route, some going the more alternative route. How do you guide those patients to make sure that everything is used in a traditionally safe manner and that is the best option for them?
We compound a lot of our medications, and the reason why we compound it is we control the dosing. Controlling the dosing controls the side effects. It's a way to go around side effects. It's a way to cater to everybody else's needs. We don't want you. So, for instance, with ivermectin, some people have to take it in higher doses. We'll give you the ability, and it's a weight-based drug, so it's based on how much you weigh. We'll give you the ability to try out and just take ivermectin throughout the course of the day, which would then lessen the side effects, traditionally speaking. So you could take 6 milligrams 3 times a day, or if you're like me and I take every vitamin in the morning on an empty stomach because my stomach can handle it, you just take 18 milligrams once a day. So it's more about flexibility, and flexibility can be derived from so many different reasons. And that's why we truly like compounding. But again, we use nothing but high quality pharmaceutical ingredients. Our methylene blue is of USP quality, and I see that all over the internet. USP quality, United States Pharmacopoeia. As a pharmacy, we can only purchase USP quality medications and APIs, we call them on our level, but medications, and it's got to be through an FDA-approved facility for human consumption. Nothing touches our doors that's made for animals only. Nothing touches our doors that's made, for research purposes only. It's all for human consumption. It's all FDA approved. Legally, we can only sell that, and we only have interest to sell that because, again, it's to protect the consumer, protect the patient.
And that's going into my next question of mebendazole, because it's known as the deworming medication, and there's new research on its possible role for cancer therapy, something that may touch all of us because we're living longer. Also, cancer, one of the top 5 leading causes of death in the United States of America. So either it hits us or hits someone we love over the course of our lives. Can you explain how a simple antiparasitic might have anti-tumor effects and help us to remain a curb against this C word that seems to affect most people in the United States?
Of course. It's a big industry right now, the cancer industry, and so many companies are trying to fight against it. Mebendazole, ivermectin, these anti-parasites, it's used off-label. Nothing's guaranteed. We've seen miracles. We see it every day. We see it every week. We hear about it all the time. A lot of articles about it, a lot of trials going through right now. Small trials, though, nothing that, is of importance to the FDA or big pharma, right? So everything is not guaranteed. But again, we see it on our level where it is supporting those with cancer, as I could say. It's supporting. I want to say other words because I believe it is working, but it's off-label use, so we have to be careful with the FDA on that. But again, it disrupts how parasites process their nutrients, specifically glucose. Cancer cells have a similar weakness in that regard. So early research did show that it was blocking some sort of tumor growth by interfering with cell division and starving the cancer cells of glucose. It's still being studied. It's still in trials. It's still being researched. But maybe I'd say about a year ago, maybe even less than a year ago, nobody knew what mebendazole was. I did a lot of research on it only because of Joe Tippins and Dr. William Makis and all of these physicians that are working on fenbendazole. Fenbendazole is an animal drug. I can't sell that. I wouldn't sell it. It's not made for human consumption. I'm not going to tell you not to take it. I just personally, on the pharmacy level, we can't work with it. But we then ran into mebendazole, which is biosimilar. And it's made for humans. It's got a lot of the same characteristics. So we started looking at this almost a year ago. I found it. It took me forever to find it, but I found a manufacturer. I found an FDA-approved facility that had the medication that was used for human consumption, and we purchased it. We started selling it. We were one of the first pharmacies to start to sell it. That was one of the big things we got popular as well, is nobody was selling mebendazole. because on a commercially available product, it's $600 a tablet. And you could see why nobody wanted to sell it. But when we compounded it, we bought it ourselves and made it, we ran our own testing, stability testing, certificate of analysis, we could sell us 60 capsules for $120. And so to us, it made sense. To other people, it didn't. So, that's how we found mebendazole, and we believe mebendazole is a big part of the future, and we hope that it continues to do well during studies and trials.
Now, with the compounding you're speaking of, is that also something to do with drug repurposing? So taking the old and the new and putting them together in order to bring an approach to benefit patients and bring down those costs? Because you hear so often that there are people on occasion with a serious illness that are going bankrupt, even with insurance and all of being involved in the medical field in the quote unquote right way. And then they end up having to make really terrible decisions as a result of their diagnoses.
Yeah, so, high-priced drugs, the system is set up to reward these expensive drugs because they're patented. So the older generics, they get overlooked. But the older generics are the medications that have been around for centuries. We know that they're safe. We know that they're effective. People have been taking them for 10 years, 20 years. Methylene blue, almost 100 years for malaria. And so these drugs have been around for a long time, and that is probably why they're cheaper. People, big pharma can no longer make money off of them because it's not patented in any way. So a lot of patients do miss out on some of these life-changing therapies because of that. It's just not profitable enough for them. But as you won't find it at a chain pharmacy, right? You won't find a lot of these drugs at a chain pharmacy. It's just not profitable. But we don't do the data and the analysis ourselves, the R&D as the drug companies call it. We read the research, we read the trials, we speak directly with the physicians. These are the ones that are bringing the information to us. And then we're giving the patient the opportunity to try, as long as it's safe and effective. So again, we have to go through a doctor, we have to go through our pharmacist, we have to go through our traditional protocols, but we will get this information. We will then pass this information along to our patients. And if they feel it's necessary or they're willing to try it or they're right to try it, President Trump says, we'll put them in touch with a physician that's going to make sure it's safe and effective, and they're going to go along with it. And traditionally speaking, we have a lot of happy patients. As you can see by our reviews, we have a lot of happy people. And so it's a good thing that we're doing this for the American people. We're not like I say, Novo Nordisk and Eli Lilly. We're not trying to patent the drug and put it on the shelves for $1,500 a month. So that's why we believe some of these older generics still have life left in them, because they're being repurposed for alternative use. Like you say, we're just compounding it to a dose that's economically better and that fits the patient's needs based on the protocol they're taking it for.
And at All Family Pharmacy, you do the compounding, as you were mentioning. How does this allow you to provide treatments like those nasal sprays, over-the-counters, and low-dose therapies that the patients can't find elsewhere?
Yeah, so when we do, the power of custom compounding is, again, it goes into the exact dose, form, and combination that a patient needs. Every patient's different. Some drugs are weight-based, some aren't. Some protocols consider a low dose. Like I know a lot of moms that like low dose naltrexone. Some patients require a high dose. So custom compounding gives the patient the ability to choose the dose that's right for them based on, biological needs as well as the protocol needs. And we believe that custom compounding is a big thing in the industry, and insurances won't touch it. We don't know why. We have, our opinions, they have their opinions, but insurances don't pay for custom compounding. This is all cash out of pocket. But we believe custom compounding is the right and the need for every patient to take a look at, because we can make you a nasal spray for NAD because you don't like injections and you don't want to inject yourself. You're scared of needles. Great. We'll make you a troche once in the morning for 30 minutes. It just sits in your cheek while you're driving to work, and you never have to poke yourself again. A nasal spray, you can do 2 sprays in each nostril and you'll never have to poke yourself again. Nasal spray is a great way for you to deliver medication to your body, specifically your brain, if it's something you need for your brain, like methylene blue and NAD plus and some of these other medications that are out there. So we try to minimize the side effects with custom compounding. We try to do a lot that can bring a lot of needs to a lot of different people.
And break us down with methylene blue, specifically an NAD+, and really any other life-saving medication that you have on the market. What are the immediate positives, and then what might be some side effects for the customer and patient to know of?
Yeah, with NAD plus and methylene blue, like I said, when you come into us, you're getting a pharmaceutical grade or pharmaceutical quality drug that is made for human consumption. We're not just picking something up off the streets. We're not just going to China and delivering and shipping a bunch of drugs to us. We go through the routes of an FDA-approved facility for those who are governed, GMP certified. These are all these certifications the U.S. government requires. It goes through stability testing. Certificate analysis is then derived, which we can read it and see that there's no heavy metals. It's made for human consumption. The purity levels are over a certain percentage. Their threshold may be 91%. Our threshold is 97 to 98%. So we prefer high quality medications when it arrives on site. And then with the NAD plus and the methylene blue, the great part about going through us is we have knowledgeable physicians who will talk you through it. You'll go through your lifestyle and they'll teach you how to use it based on your lifestyle. Some people want to use methylene blue in other ways than others. And we have physicians and pharmacists who are knowledgeable about each route that you're going to go through, and they're going to give you great information. So when you come to us, you have medical help, medical need, and then medical education, I think.
Michael, thank you so much for joining us today at RSBN and diving deep into the great elements of your company and these really new products, old in certain ways, but new in the sense that people are building on the right to try. And to ask a more government question before we close, do you think anything needs to come from Congress in the form of legislation or, say, Right to Try 2.0, something that the Trump administration championed in the first term after 200 plus days now in the second term?
Yeah, I want to say we have a lot of flexibility as compounding pharmacies. But again, we are restricted in so many ways. So it's an open-ended question. It's a big fight against Big Pharma and their patented drugs. It's, do they want us to get in the way of these big pharmaceutical companies is the question that, President Trump and the FDA all have to take a look at. I believe we should have a lot more flexibility here on the level of the pharmacy, on the pharmaceutical level. We can compound a lot more drugs than we can compound. And we can give that ability back to the patient to come to us for custom compounding. But there are so many restrictions in play that force us or don't allow us to do what we want to do. It's ultimately what's best for the patient, we believe. So if they give us more flexibility in a safe and effective way, I think they should definitely do that. I would love that. There's a lot of other compounding pharmacies in the United States that would love that. A lot of them are being sued by drug manufacturers because they're trying to go around the patent based on custom compounding. So as you can see, you can look all that up. The government should step in and protect, the pharmacies, the ones who are providing care to patients, because at the end of the day, the pharmaceutical industry at the bottom level, which is us at the pharmacy and all of our pharmacists and all of our pharmacist friends and all of the organizations, they're the ones that are getting pummeled by Big Pharma and the regulators. It's Big Pharma is the one that gets away with everything. So we believe that they should open up restrictions to us as they do to Big Pharma.
Well, thank you so much for your insight today, Michael Kunzler, co-owner of All Family Pharmacy, and you can visit now for great savings at allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. Come back and see us soon on the live desk here at Right Side Broadcasting Network. And as we cover President Trump in Anchorage, Alaska, discussing peace terms, pursuing peace, in fact, with the Russian Federation President Vladimir Putin. They will hold a press conference after their meeting. We'll bring you right there as it is 1:10 approximately in Alaska, 5:10 on the East Coast. Welcome. Good evening. I'm Robert McNeely. It's always a joy to be with you here at Right Side Broadcasting Network's live desk, bringing you unbridled access to your government and perhaps a very famous historic day, as it already is 80 years ago today, August 15th of 1945. VJ Day, victory over the Japanese Empire, helping World War II come to a complete end, and peace throughout the world as a result of that. And a world relatively reconstructed, border lines changing, governments changing, the end of communism, the rise of the decrepit ideology, once again, even in American politics, sadly, all coming to a head with this very important meeting between once great rivals, once the Soviet Union and the United States, now the Russian Federation. And we've seen with living predecessors of this president, Donald Trump, that Vladimir Putin has taken advantage of both Republican and Democrat presidents, George W. Bush, Barack Hussein Obama, and the Autopen, all losing ground, allies in Eastern Europe, suffering from Putin's pursuit of land grabs from historic boundaries of the Soviet Union and even prior to that Bolshevik revolution that Russia once owned. And now as they pursue those ports and to keep them, we know the Russian economy is very, very weak. So President Putin requesting this meeting with President Trump and President Trump requesting that it be on American soil. And this also happens to be former Russian territory, Alaska, where it was named Seward's Folly back during the Lincoln administration as the Secretary of State, William Seward, pursued this land, 2 cents an acre, which ended up being perhaps the second most important purchase after the Louisiana Purchase to expand this great nation. And during those Cold War periods, having the safety of Alaska, not only as a global headquarters for trade, but also as a point for safety and security with J-Bear, where both leaders landed today, one of the most premier Air Force bases in all of the world. And fun fact, J-Bear and the Anchorage Airport, they don't close. If you ever watch those fun shows on the History Channel that highlight this great wilderness, the last frontier, as they call it, Alaska, does not matter how cold it gets, they will still land those big planes, those big UPS and private planes, and other ways because of global trade. Just too important to the entire world with its location. And an excellent place to go hunting and fishing and to explore year-round. So I highly recommend you, if you haven't been, go visit the great Anchorage, Alaska, where 40% of Alaskan residents do reside in this rather large municipality land-wise and with its population. Now, in other news, President Trump putting out on Truth Social that Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, has newly declassified top secret emails that were sent on December 16th of 2016 after the presidential election between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, complying with President Obama's order to create the manufactured January 2017 ICA about Russia's exposure, how DNI James Clapper demanded the IC fall in line behind the Russia hoax. Clapper admits that was a team sport that required compromise on normal modalities. I guess he forgot his bleach bit. At least Hillary Clinton remembered hers when she bleach bit all those emails. But it's becoming very clear that the head of Democrat apparatus in power and John Brennan, a communist himself, he was very involved in communist activity in his college years, clearly may be guilty of treason. Everyone is innocent until proven guilty. But Barack Hussein Obama's administration thought that you, the American people, were not smart enough to choose their leaders and wanted to usurp the authority of the duly elected president of the United States because he was a civilian president. Beforehand, never holding public office, but rather wanting to serve the people of this great country. It's a travesty. It makes Watergate look like child's play. It's amazing to live in these times, and I'm praying for liberty and justice for all, and that our system of constitutional Republican governance will stand against these evildoers, and it must, in order to keep the integrity of the rules and laws in this great nation. Thank you to our sponsors at Right Side Broadcasting Network Live, Text Network USA, tnusa.com/RSBN. Settle those back taxes today. Protect yourself from the IRS. Call today. Don't delay. It's 800-357-1415. tnusa.com. Settle those back taxes immediately. We know the Autopen put up 80,000 new IRS agents. President Trump sending many of them to help the Border Patrol. But still, these great patriots here, they're expert accountants. Some of them have worked for the IRS. They want to help you in this process. TNUSA.com/RSBN. That is Tax Network USA. And one of my favorites from Patriot Addict Deals, the Trump plane. I have one of these at home, a great replica to put on your office and showcase your MAGA credentials. PatriotAddictDeals.com just released a fresh batch of their limited edition Trump planes, all handmade, each taking months to craft. Only about 100 planes arrived in this specific run of them, and they're already going fast. So once they're gone, they're gone. And I absolutely love mine. So get your limited edition now for 20% off. PatriotAddictDeals.com, code RSBN20. That's code RSBN20. The Trump Force One airplane and Trump Force One is relaxing right now at PBI. And we happened to pass it when we were in the presidential motorcade 5 months ago, when we took the visit down to Palm Beach and to Mar-a-Lago to talk to the president over the weekend about tariffs and how he was implementing those. If you remember having the opportunity of asking him a couple of great questions on the plane and outside of the plane on that trip over the course of St. Patrick's Day weekend in the beautiful free sunshine state of Florida, where President Trump was able to defend one of his club championships at Trump International Palm Beach. So that was a wonderful trip, as I'm sure this is a wonderful trip for our friends and colleagues in the media who are exploring Anchorage, Alaska. I know a thing or two about the municipality because I covered local politics there a few years ago. And hello, a shout out to friends and colleagues from those years who are watching RSBN today. A big moment for this beautiful area of the world. It's really a showcase to see God's beauty on display in Alaska. And you can see some of it right now in case you missed playback from President Trump exiting the plane, greeting Russian Federation President Vladimir Putin on the red carpet with the Alaska 2025. Almost looks like a precursor to the Olympics. Check out this great video right now.
to a ceasefire.
Mr. President, what's your message to Vladimir Putin?
Mr. Putin, did you underestimate Ukraine? President Putin, will you stop killing civilians? President Putin, how can the U.S. trust your words?
Thank you, press. Thank you, press. Thank you, press. Thank you, press. Let's go. Let's go. Come on, guys. Put us down.
We're still holding for a minute? Okay. The driver's here, so.
Bars up.
We'll have to look down. We'll stay up until the motorcade leaves.
And welcome back to RSBN's live desk. As you saw there, President Trump and President Putin getting off their respective planes in Air Force One onto the red carpet, Alaska 2025, that podium there for some questions from American media. It seemed as if the Russian president could not hear exactly over the loud vehicles around, not only the planes and the tarmac on J-Bear, but did you see the B-52 and the accompanying fighter jets with them over J-Bear? President Trump on cue doing that while saluting our great men and women in the military and Air Force Base, one of the largest in the country, that oversees the Pacific Fleet as well, protects them from land and air and, of course, the sky, especially in that process, but home to all 6 branches of the military. It's quite a sight to see, just to park along anywhere really in Anchorage, enjoy the sights and the sounds, look out to Mount McKinley and also the amazing aircraft that flies over the municipality, as it is home to American military and one of the most strategic bases in the entire world. Thank you to our sponsors on Right Side Broadcasting Network. As you see the pursuit of peace taking place now, get your ivermectin and mebendazole for 25% off. Use that code RSBN10 for that additional 10% off. Scan the QR code now. Allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN wants you to have the freedom to choose your medication and protect your bodily autonomy, something that not every doctor will necessarily prescribe, or sometimes the PBMs block because they're double dipping into insurance and a local pharmacy down the street. So you need All Family Pharmacy. They cover these medications and carry them for you with a prescription-based doctors and discussion, if that is what you need with you right now to have in your medicine cabinet or on the road during your summer vacations. We're talking antibiotics, antivirals, things that can protect against bacterial infections and cancer, like methylene blue. Really an incredible study with that to kill cancer cells. as we learn more and more about that. NAD Plus as well, 200 essential medications, emergency medical kits, antibiotics. Just request the medication you want online. No red tape, no bureaucracy. Even if you don't have medical or health insurance, that's okay. These prescriptions mail to you within 2 to 3 days at the latest, some cases 24 hours from when you order. Their goal is simple: to put health back into your hands, into your pocket. With All Family Pharmacy, you could keep these essential medications at hand, ready for any emergency. Now, you could scrub back as well before the press conference with President Trump and President Putin, which will happen on this broadcast. Just interviewed Michael Kunzler of the great All Family Pharmacy, the co-owner, who is ensuring that people have this opportunity to get these life-saving medications. We did a deep dive. It was a 23-minute interview, so be sure to look back on that. If you have any questions regarding allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN, charging and leading the way on online pharmacies, a new revolution. As I have something right here that you're going to love, especially if you're taking a trip to Alaska, and this guy could probably work out nicely given it's 52 degrees in Anchorage right now at roughly 1:30 in the afternoon there. But check this out. It's a nice big hoodie that you can wear. The 10-pocket tactical hoodie unlocks 60% off. Scan that QR code now. The smart people are unlocking the winter gear right now because this is a hands down the best time to prep for the coming winter or your Alaskan vacation. Bearskin is running a 60% off deal, and the hoodie is built like a tank. It has a micro fleece, 10 pockets. It's actually extraordinarily comfortable. You just love to touch it because it feels nice and lightweight, but it will keep you warm. So a double whammy there. Plus it zips right into the heavy storm rain jacket to become 100% waterproof. So I actually threw this on to go outside because it is storming like crazy right now. Actually, it's settled down a little bit in the loveliest village on the plains in Auburn, Alabama. But when this turns cold, wet, and windy, you're not scrambling last minute, and you can remain comfortable when you're out there on your Alaskan hike. Now, you'll get free U.S. shipping, fast delivery, and unlock this winter gear for yourself using the word RSBN. Just text RSBN to 36912. It's 36912. Easy to remember. You'll get the link straight to your phone. Use code RSBN to 36912. There you are. The Bearskin world's only 10-pocket hoodie. Again, right here for you on display. It's like I'm the male version of Vanna White right now. It's fantastic. So you got to get one for your Alaskan adventure or your outdoor adventure. Come any season, but especially winter time. Waterproof and quite efficient. Lightweight, easy to wear. It will keep you warm. 60% off now. Scan that QR code. Thank you to Bearskin for sponsoring us on the right side of history. And this day is historic already, as it's the Victory over Japan Day 80 years ago, August 15th of 1945. Can peace be pursued once again? That is the question that will be answered over the course of the next couple of hours. They have mic checks going on right now. It seems as if media going into the room to hear from President Trump and President Putin on the potential end of the Ukrainian war after 3.5 bloody years. And someone who has not necessarily kept his word, Mr. Putin, on the phone with President Trump over the course of these 200 plus days of the new administration, saying that, yes, I want peace. And then, as President Trump said, he'd go and blow up a nursing home or hit a school, hit non-military installments. And it's just our prayers, our thoughts and prayers truly with the Ukrainian and the Russian people, because they have bad leadership on both the accounts of President Putin and President Zelensky. But the man who can handle this situation, none other than President Donald Trump, because throughout this second term, we've seen it with Cambodia and Thailand to Iran and Israel, and also Pakistan and India. He has prevented nuclear war from happening. That's not an overstatement. Of course, you might have that friend out there that's either listening to legacy media or just has their head in the sand saying, oh, all you do is worship Donald Trump. No, it's a fact that this man knows how to engage and uses his deal-making abilities to bring peace about in the world. And he said specifically with this one, Russia and Ukraine, that it's really not our dog in the race. It's truly up to Vladimir Putin and Vladimir Zelensky. The only thing they really have in common is their first name. The two men do hate each other, and it's sad to see how this has prolonged into such a bloody conflict. But President Trump also ending and Africa celebrating the Democratic Republic of the Congo and the Republic of Rwanda. It's the bloodiest conflict since World War II in the entire world. Tribal warfare going on for countless decades. President Trump bringing those leaders to the White House with the leadership of Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who is with President Trump in Anchorage, Alaska today, along with Steve Witkoff, Special Envoy, and their Russian counterparts, all dialoguing right at this very minute. So don't change that dial. Get that popcorn ready. Perhaps open up a nice ice-cold can of beer this summer, or your favorite cocktail. Sit back, relax, and let's watch Pursuing Peace at 5:30 Eastern, 1:30 in Alaska. In case you missed it, President Trump had a big week. So we go back to the Home Rule Act to make Washington, D.C. safe and beautiful again with his national security team, and Judge Jeanine Pirro leading as the U.S. Attorney in the District of Columbia, to the Kennedy Center honorees with Sylvester Stallone, Michael Crawford, and Gloria Gaynor, as well as Kiss, who are going to be honored this year, and none other than King George himself from the Lone Star State of Texas, one of the greatest recording artists, not only in country music, but of all time. I mean, numbers that in some cases beat Elvis and some of the biggest recording stars in all of music history. And yesterday, President Trump doing a little bit something regarding executive orders into Social Security and that campaign pledge to make it not only more affordable for you, but to make sure you're getting those benefits that you paid into and that illegal aliens don't get their hands on the American benefits that you paid into, that you were relying on this 90th anniversary of the program known as Social Security. So we could play back those videos from the Oval Office yesterday.
I'd like to start off by thanking the President for his tireless effort in running the country, in what he's done across the country, meeting every commitment. And, you know, I see it directly in the big, beautiful bill, the opportunity that it's brought to seniors. But his effort on every commitment, delivering against it, and delivering on world peace tirelessly. I'd like to also thank him for my opportunity. You know, he's teasing me, I'm teasing him about the economics of the job, but the reality is to serve 300 million Americans, which is what Social Security serves, is a tremendous honor. And him putting that faith in me and building what I believe, and I think I have a right to say it, is the best leadership team ever assembled in the White House and in the cabinet. So that's my great honor. So I come here and get the opportunity to serve the American public in a manner that I never imagined in my life. And what we found was the opportunity to fix a foundation. The reality is, people talk about 72 beneficiaries. I talk about over 300 million Americans with a Social Security number that we must protect through the system. And when you look at what we talk about in eliminating Social Security numbers that were live in the system, they could carry fraud through the whole system. So the first thing was root out fraud, waste, and abuse. But while doing it, the best way to be more efficient is provide more accurate payments and better service. And you heard the numbers. I think the most staggering number is that we had a website that was down 29 hours. This will be a digital-first agency, and we are building my SSA accounts. That's the digital account. And we have a bold goal of 200 million Americans to have a digital SSA account by the end of next year. It will happen. Just like we had a bold goal of single-digit wait time on the calls when they were at 40 minutes. And we did that. This is my 100th day. We did that within 90 days, right? Get the web up and running, bring technology to our field offices, use digital presence to answer and serve the American public. That's the job. When we do all that, then we'll really know the answer to if we have a hole, right? I was presented in my second week on the job with $18 billion in errors by the Inspector General. It was public. In less than a month, we solved 9 billion of it. So that's the type of swift action we can take, right? You see the things like the big, beautiful bill for the seniors. You see better digital services. You see field office wait times down. If you make an appointment to have a field office visit, it now happens in 6 minutes. Unprecedented. We are serving more people and delivering more than was ever delivered before in a manner with the highest possible quality, and we've just begun. You should expect this to be a great digital-first agency. My commitment to make this happen is as deep as the president's commitment to make the world a great place. And you see the fabulous job happening here across America and what he's doing in the world. You should expect Social Security, just like the president. I thank him for making America great again. It's happening. Social Security will be great again. You have my commitment. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. Last month, I signed one big, beautiful bill and allowed no tax on Social Security for our great seniors, okay? So how's that? Not bad, right? No tax on Social Security for our seniors. And to protect our benefits, we've already kicked nearly 275,000 illegal aliens off of the Social Security system. These are people, many of them have already left the country, and yet we were sending them checks all the time. And 275,000, and that number is now even larger than that, Frank. It's an unbelievable job. And what that's doing is making the system strong. It's making it strong. Biden never kicked anybody off. Everybody joined. And we're carrying out historic deportations to remove many more illegals committing Social Security fraud. It's the Social Security fraud that was taking place at levels that nobody's ever seen. We cleared 12.4 million names listed in the Social Security database over 120 years of age. Think of that. So we had 12.4 million names where they were over 120 years old. Is that right? That's a hell of a statement. I have a feeling, Dan, that's not really gonna, that really didn't happen, did it? So you have 12.4 million names listed in the Social Security database that were over 120 years of age, meaning you were breaking records, because I've never heard of anybody at 125. There were nearly 135,000 people listed who were over 160 years old, and in some cases getting payments. So somebody's getting those payments, and we're after that. Almost 60 million American seniors rely on Social Security for peace of mind and a life of dignity and retirement. These Americans paid into the system, and they deserve leaders in Washington who are going to protect the benefits they've had and protect Social Security. Under Biden, Social Security went down like nobody's ever seen it, deteriorated. There's never been anything like it. The 4 years of Biden were very, very destructive. It couldn't have gone on much longer. Social Security was going to be destroyed. It was being destroyed. The average call wait time reached an all-time high of more than 42 minutes. Field office wait times were at 32 minutes, which is unheard of, and the disability claims backlog was the longest ever in recorded history. In other words, it was run just like the country was run. It was run really badly. But I'm pleased to report that under our leadership, and Frank in particular, the changes he's made and what he's done is sort of a miracle. Sort of like what happened with the country as a whole. Field office wait times are now down 30% since last year, and it looks like it's going to a total record number. And the record was set in a long time ago when
the world was a lot different place, and we're gonna beat that record. Call wait times are down 73% while serving twice as many customers per day. The disability claims backlog is down 26%, and seniors now have 24/7 online access to their accounts, which they never had before, whereas under Biden, the website was down 29 hours a week for maintenance purposes. It was essentially not open very much. They were always maintaining it, but they didn't know what the hell they were doing. They had a person running that had no idea what they were doing. Among my very first acts was to order all government employees to return to the office or be removed from the job, which means our Social Security offices are now open for full business hours 5 days a week. So unlike being shut down all the time, we're open at record levels also. We're making it really great for the people that want and demand Social Security, and they paid into the system. They deserve it.
Bank of America just announced that in addition to all these announcements on Social Security, as President Trump signing those executive orders and working for you, the American people, it's on the verge of collapse, the dollar itself. So monetary gold, wealth, security, preservation, the latest sponsor here on the right side of history. Grab your complimentary presidential gold guide. Call now. Do not delay. 800-476-7790. Ask how to eliminate your annual IRA fees for life. RSBN for thegold.com. Call immediately to discover how to eliminate all of your IRA fees. Gold and silver have been the ultimate source of monetary savings and value for over 5,000 years now in human history. History tells us when paper money fails, when inflation skyrockets, it's these precious metals that survive the test of time and can protect you in that process. They will show you how to protect your savings right now. Again, call 800-476-7790, RSBN for thegold.com. Thank you to Monetary Gold, the latest sponsor on Right Side Broadcasting Network, and Kalshi.com/RSBN. We hope you won some money already, because the question of will President Trump and President Putin shake hands for 3 seconds, it lasted about 10 seconds to my count. I was a little bit ahead of myself, so maybe about 9.5 there. But regardless, 71% of you said that chance was likely, so a little extra dough and cash in your pocket. What will President Trump say during the press conference moments away from now, with a live feed going on regarding a multitude of questions with this very important meeting to pursue peace and potentially bring an end to the Ukrainian conflict? Again, you're watching President Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin as they're discussing very intently right now what to do regarding Ukraine and the potential end of this 3.5-year conflict. Kalshi.com/RSBN is right on top of it in this beautiful afternoon. 1:45 in Anchorage, Alaska, 5:45 in Washington, D.C. as you see the photos, exclusive photos off of Air Force One and the Russian jet that brought Mr. Vladimir Putin over to American soil with the B-52 and fighter pilot flyover at J-Bear, one of the most crucial bases for the United States Air Force and in the entire world for global trade and international security. Alaska 2025. Smiles on the face of President Putin and President Trump, two men that disagree, and I'm sure agree on some things, but have respect for one another. And this president, just as he did as a businessman, highlighting the great apparatus of hospitality and hotels, the golf world, we saw that on display at Trump Turnberry, knows how to showcase our big, beautiful, bold military being rebuilt under his leadership and the leadership of Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, with those F-12s, F-15s all lining up around the beast and the presidential motorcade. We look forward to the discussions being made and having gone on at this very moment between the United States and the Russian Federation. This is crucial for the peace of the world, for the peace of this region, and this president knows how to do just that. As we've shared on the broadcast, look at the countless amount of conflicts he's brought to an end, in some cases decades long, generations long, across all different kinds of continents around the world. Now we have very special guest, Mr. Jackson Laymeyer. He is with the Pastors for Trump Coalition. And thank you, sir, for joining on a short moment's notice to talk about this very historic day. It's 80 years since the victory over Japan, the Japanese Empire surrendering to the United States, which brought about really a new world order of sorts. And with the conclusion of that bloody conflict, the United States leading peace into this now 21st century. 80 years later, can we have peace between Russia and Ukraine?
Well, I'll just say it's an honor to be on with you, and it's kind of exciting, right? We're on the verge of possible history, world-changing history, and just been praying for our president. He doesn't just need wisdom and strength; he needs divine wisdom and strength and courage and discernment. And this could save the lives of hundreds of thousands of people. Too many have needlessly died because of Joe Biden. And so hopefully, President Trump is able to fix Joe Biden's problem, which I'm optimistic. He seems to be the deal maker, right? He's already ended several wars. And I mean, think about it. He's only been in there 6 months. We're talking 6 months. And I think he's already ended like 6 wars. And this could be number 7. So, man, what an exciting time to be alive. Things have radically changed in just a year.
And as we look back to the presidency of John F. Kennedy, the uncle of the Secretary of Health and Human Services, Robert F. Kennedy, speaking very boldly and proudly of his uncle. If you can remember those speeches, that it's easy for men to get into war, to battle one another. It takes a true man to really struggle and fight for that peace, a peace that's really everlasting. We see those similarities between JFK, a Democrat, and Donald Trump, a Republican. From a Christian perspective, Pastor, how do you analyze a situation like this? 3.5 years of the Russian and Ukrainian people, very traditional, wonderful cultures, but seemingly pretty bad leadership. And ultimately, how can they come together after a terrible, bloody conflict like this?
Yeah, I mean, to the point, how many people have died? I don't know that number, but I know it's too many, far too many. And, elections have consequences, and we've seen that. They don't just impact our people here in America. They impact people across the world. And so Donald Trump is, he's fulfilling a very well-known Bible verse. Blessed are the peacemakers. And to your point, yeah, anybody can start a war. It takes a real special individual to end a war, especially one that he didn't start. This is not his fault. He didn't do anything to start this war. And so I'm optimistic. I believe that God is going to guide our president as he has been. God spared his life in Butler, Pennsylvania, a little over a year ago. And I think for a purpose just like this right here, President Trump has been raised up for such a time as this. And he is the man that God has anointed and appointed into this position. And so, we got to be optimistic. We got to be praying for him. I don't think, it's going to necessarily just happen overnight, which that would be an incredible miracle, right? If it was just like today they come and announce the war is over. But, maybe the steps are being laid out to have that ceasefire, which will ultimately, hopefully, bring an end to the war. And for goodness sakes, give President Trump a Nobel Peace Prize. Give him several prizes, for what he's doing. And I think we're going to have good results. I really, really do. And the blessing of the Lord will be on this nation as we continue to bring peace to other nations that are at conflict. I mean, what a responsibility that the United States of America has, not just as the world leader, but also as bringing peace to areas of the world that have been without it for so long.
And I can aptly name your name, Pastor, to that list of growing calls for that Nobel Peace Prize, whether it's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to the government of Pakistan. And to your point, the bloodiest conflict since World War II between the Democratic Republic of the Congo and the Republic of Rwanda, that all coming to an end, in the African continent that's not usually in the news, and Azerbaijan, Armenia. And that's really my thing here. As terrible as this is, and it needs the focus, we saw the legacy media really diving into that. If you did not have the Ukraine flag outside your house, you were somehow evil in the process. I mean, even a friend of the network here, Kevin McCarthy, the former Speaker of the House, I always thought that was a little bit of a surprise to me, because even though we could share in that Christian world values and world belief in the same kind of thing that brings all of our churches together, because really we are the church. And I would ask you about that, if you agree that is the church just inside a building or is it outside? But we saw Kevin McCarthy simply wearing that Ukrainian pin, and he had the right to do that. But I always thought, why is he not wearing an American flag on his lapel in that process? But what do you think about that, Pastor? Is it really something
I find it interesting.
Yeah.
You know, if I was an executive for the corporation of Nike, I probably wouldn't be walking around wearing, Adidas merchandise.
Right.
That just kind of defeats the purpose. I'm an executive for Nike, and so that's the whole motto of America First, isn't it? That our representatives are elected to represent us, not other interests of other countries. However, because of the role that America has within the world stage, America First brings peace to these other regions as well, as our interest is not to have these conflicts taking place that try to suck us into these endless wars that, unfortunately, for the majority of my life, my country has been in endless wars that we were never going to end by military conflict. And so I love the president's approach, is that we're going to settle these things diplomatically, and if we have to use the power of the purse, if we have to use measures that we have to our advantage, economically or whatever that may be, to bring about peace, I'm all for that. And so I do think an America First agenda is to end the war in Russia and Ukraine, because how many billions have we spent funding this war? I don't know that number either, but I know it's too many. And so hopefully, the president will do what he has done. That one war you mentioned in Africa, nobody talks about that one, but that had been going on for a long time. And then all of a sudden, here's President Trump, because I do believe that there is a mantle on him as a peacemaker. That really seems to be his goal. He wants to be remembered in history as a president that did not start wars, but as a president that brought about peace.
And he said that on the way to the press gaggle, the roughly 7.5-hour trip from Joint Base Andrews in Maryland to Anchorage, Alaska's J-Bear, that this is not really good for his health. But to your point, he wants to do this to bring about peace and be remembered for that. And that's what I think has got people thinking, Pastor, about being involved in politics once again, especially from that Christian perspective, because you've had these neocon and neoliberal presidents, the living former presidents in the last 25, 30 years, predecessors of President Trump, who took the opposite approach, who almost were a bit too trigger happy. But that's what I find interesting. Christian genocide happening in Africa, Armenia and Azerbaijan, the people living in Los Angeles who escaped that. I can remember when I was out west, and I love that Bryant jersey you have on the back of the wall there, the Black Mamba, an absolute hero in so many ways and a great Christian man himself. That these people who lived in Los Angeles, a big Armenian Azerbaijan population, and it's almost as if they were crying and no one was hearing their call other than God. But for some reason, the United States media, the American media, stayed away from that for a long time. But as important as this negotiation is, why do you think that, A, you have it was talked about so much in the legacy media and other conflicts simply ignored? And is it not true that the United States, ever since Abraham Lincoln up until Donald Trump, truly we cannot be taken down unless it's from within, and to the billions and billions poured overseas in these never-ending wars and conflicts, ultimately we'll be taken down from inside, because by God's blessing, we have somehow gotten through the most unbelievable conflicts in the last 250 years.
Yeah, well, history is a great teacher. And, America is arguably the greatest empire that the world has ever seen. Maybe a rival would be the Roman Empire, right? And the Roman Empire could not be taken down from the outside. Nobody was defeating the Roman Empire. But what happened was Rome collapsed from within. Rome was expending so much resources on never-ending wars in areas as they expanded their territory. They were having an invasion of people coming into the Roman Empire that they could not sustain. And so Rome collapsed from within. And so if America is going to collapse, it would not be because there's some military power halfway across the world that would fight us toe-to-toe militarily. But if America is to collapse, which I do not believe we're going to anytime soon, but if America was, it would be because of we couldn't handle our own house. We couldn't take care of our own people. We'd be invaded by other people. And we were on that trajectory. We were going off a cliff very fast under Biden, and it would have been accelerated under Kamala Harris. But God kind of gave us a reprieve, a moment where we could get our house back in order so that America could be what America's always been, that bright, shining light on a hill, that whenever people see the flag of America, it's to represent peace and prosperity and not warfare. And see, life is so valuable. And I think President Trump gets that. Are these lives in Russia and Ukraine, are they as valuable as American lives? Yes, life is valuable. And so he sees that, and he wants to do what he can as the leader of the free world. I mean, you talk about a burden of responsibility on your shoulders. I can't even imagine. But God has graced him, and we're seeing such great results.
And he seems to smile and throw some comedy into these very crucial times, along with the stress, as you mentioned, Pastor. How should the average Christian respond to a world in such a time as this? Because we can look to the Old Testament, we can look to the New Testament, and those salvation history shows us that arc of God choosing those who seem to be completely unqualified. But we know that that God himself does not call the qualified, he calls the chosen. And we've seen that through new media. We've seen that through that wonderful show, The Chosen, in fact, how I love the interactions, literally bringing the Bible to life in so many different ways, either with Christian media or within the legacy media to a certain extent. And I'm definitely looking forward to Mel Gibson's Resurrection, which will be in 2 parts come March and May of 2027. So right around that Easter period, and then also at Pentecost. Just give us some thoughts as how God has put us on this earth for such a time as this.
Yeah, well, let me give a twofold answer to that. One, in regards to President Trump, I was being interviewed by the legacy media. I'm pretty sure it was CNN. This was during the campaign. And the journalist was sincere in the question. Do you think that God can use someone as flawed as Donald Trump to accomplish his perfect will? And my response was, God only uses people as flawed as Donald Trump to accomplish his perfect will. And so if you're a flawed individual, that means you're a great candidate for God to use you, because every single person God ever used throughout the Old Testament, the New Testament, church history, very flawed people. And so what can we do right here, right now? Because it's like, I cannot settle the war in Ukraine or in Israel or any of that. I can't do that. But what I can do is a couple things. One, I can be praying that President Trump and his team will have great wisdom. Two, I can cling so tightly to the truth of God's word that whenever the legacy media puts out disinformation, misinformation, that I will be able to discern truth from falsehood. I will be able to not fall into deception, because there's so many voices right now, right? I mean, there are so many voices out there. And if you don't know the truth, you'll easily be deceived. However, we're given a promise. When you know the truth, and the truth is a person, his name is Jesus. When you know the truth, you'll be set free. Set free from what? Part of it is deception. The enemy uses deception to bind people. And so you got to know God's word. And I know a lot of people, us preachers, I think we've beaten a dead horse when we say, read your Bible, read your Bible, read your Bible. You should read your Bible, but I get something. There's a lot of people, they don't like to read. So let me encourage those of you who struggle. You feel like you're letting God down because you have a hard time reading your Bible. Well, stop reading your Bible. Start listening to your Bible. See, there's so many apps that you are privy to. And here's the thing you got to realize. The Bible says faith does not come by reading God's word. faith comes by hearing God's word. The vast majority of Christians who have ever lived, they did not own a personal Bible that they opened up and they read. They heard the word of the Lord. And so if you struggle reading, set yourself free tonight, get the Bible app, and begin listening to God's word. It'll change your life, I promise.
Such a great word of advice, Pastor, because it reminds me of the Museum of the Bible. To that point in human history, most did not have that until the Gutenberg printing press.
Right.
And it's great to go in and just see how Western civilization and the United States of America really shaped by that book, the Word of God, literally bestowed upon us. And not to put you on the spot, Pastor Jackson Lehmeyer, I'm just looking at your X account and pastor of Sheridan Church, the founder of pastorsfortrump.com, to visit that. But you reposted today. Take a moment today and pray for President @Real Donald Trump, and he will have divine wisdom, strength, courage, and discernment as he meets with President Putin in Alaska. That's happening right now. Would you mind throwing down a prayer on the network for thousands to join in right now, as they look like they might be concluding this relatively soon, but we could be praying for them as they're having this discussion. Why not do that?
Oh, absolutely. Asking a preacher to pray is not putting him on the spot. We're supposed to be ready in season and out of season, right?
Amen.
But I'll tell you what, there are so many people right now that are watching this, and we could take a moment and gather and we could pray. So let's do it right now. Father, we lift up our president to you, President Trump. And God, we thank you that you spared his life over a year ago for this moment right here, right now. And so we just ask that you would give him and his team such wisdom, discernment, that you would give them supernatural insight, and most importantly, Lord, give them discernment so that they would know not just what is being spoken, but what is being unspoken. And Father, we just ask that you would cause a supernatural pathway to end the war in Ukraine so that people could get their lives together, that no more needless deaths would take place. Father, we thank you. You are the Prince of Peace, and we ask that you would bring peace in the name that is above every single name, the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. The good Reverend, thank you so much for that beautiful prayer, and we pray for that today, as it seems President Trump and President Putin working towards that. We'll see some results here tonight, so I encourage everyone to stay tuned for that, and please join us again soon on RSBN's Live Desk.
Well, thank you so much for having me on, man. I appreciate it. You guys are rock stars.
Thank you so much. Likewise. God bless you.
Thank you.
And we are covering it all right from the loveliest village on the plains, Auburn, Alabama, as President Trump is currently meeting with President Putin regarding pursuing peace. And we see some of our fine naval officers who are, I'm sure, stationed there right in Anchorage, Alaska. It's home to all of the branches of the military. In fact, all 6 of the branches can find a home at JBER, as Dan Scavino is saying that the Trump-Putin 3-on-3 meeting is now the 2.5-hour mark. So that 3-on-3 stating that other than the translators, it's President Trump and President Putin, his counterpart, and then also his defense ministers in Russia, also our Secretary of State Marco Rubio, along with Steve Witkoff, the special envoy who has been crucial in these negotiations and really the right-hand man of Marco Rubio to get this all done. So they're still meeting behind closed doors with the Russian delegation at Joint Base Elmdorf there, JBER. We are ready to see that. I did a lot of local reports right from that base. And so this is a place near and dear to my heart. Anchorage, Alaska. If you have not taken a visit up there, please do, because it's great in the summertime. Even in the winter, it's great. You just have not that many hours of sunlight. So you might want to go during the summertime where it's an endless summer. And people actually make dinner reservations at 10:30 because they're too busy exploring the wilderness. We get kind of hungry after that, but 10:30 can look like 5:30 up in the summertime in Alaska. Thank you to our sponsors on the right side of history, Tax Network USA, tnusa.com/RSBN. Settle your back taxes today. Protect yourself from the IRS. Call today. Do not delay. 800-357-1415. 800-357-1415. With over 80,000 new IRS agents from the Auto Pen Administration, you do yourself a service to just go check this out in case you missed the April 15th deadline, in case you open a new business. It happens. There's just so much backlog sometimes when you're starting that dream ownership of, say, a baking shop, or even opening up a new restaurant, or any kind of business that you're in. And oops, you got to file those taxes. tnusa.com/RSBN can help you with that. And when you have all that extra money from that refund you get from the IRS, sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't, why not grab a Trump Force One airplane? Claim your 20% off using code RSBN20, patriotaddictdeals.com. That's patriotaddictdeals.com. Get your limited edition Trump Force One airplane for 20% off, patriotaddictdeals.com. Claim 20% off using this great code RSBN20. I have one of these, and they go fast. There's only 100 in this latest batch that are hand-carved and crafted. So you can put that right there on your MAGA office and irritate people like Jimmy Kimmel, who don't care for making America great again, which we know is making the world safer in this process, because the MAGA agenda is about peace through strength. It's about domestic tranquility and international security. And as the good pastor mentioned, who just visited with us, Jackson Laymeyer, the burden that's on this president's shoulders has to be immense, and that God chooses people who you don't think would necessarily be qualified, but he calls the surprise. I never thought that President Donald Trump, growing up watching him on The Apprentice, would be president of the United States, but it's shown us that you can use common sense and a business background in government and public service. And mind you, a man who does not take a salary. He legally takes $1 per quarter. Each time he gets that, he passes it off to someone who is in need of it. And a mark of a great man, a charitable person, if you remember from that show in season 3, one of the contestants asked President Trump, "Is it true that you paid off the mortgage of someone who helped you with a flat tire?" And in that moment, it was reality TV, but it was not scripted. He said, "I don't want to talk about it. Move on." And the guy kept pestering him at dinner. He said, "Fine." He goes, "It's true." And he's like, wow. And that was really a highlight in that show, just the fact that that's the way he'll repay people, but he wants to do it quietly. And to put up with this much stress, it's really kind of remarkable. And you look at the entire family, and that's, as the good pastor said, pray for the strength of this family as well, what they have been through. Imagine your dad or your brother, your grandfather, being shot at, or standing up what he believes in, and then standing immediately saying, fight, 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 win, 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 don't back down. Or the fake impeachments to the lawfare. Most people, they could not take the pressure. But this man, somehow, the shield and protection of God behind him. And it's biblical in nature. It really is. And I don't care who laughs or scoffs at that, because he has dug deep thanks to the will of God. And I think changed ever since that day in Butler, that thank God God shielded him and protected him in that moment. You know, this is an interesting anniversary, not just because it's Victory Over Japan Day, 80 years ago, August 15th of 1945, when World War II really came to the end with the destruction of the Japanese Empire. But today also marks, for some churches, including the Catholic Church, the Assumption of the Virgin Mary. And the end of her life as disciples and apostles who were out spreading the message in the Word, by divine guidance in some cases, came back to her as she was near death to bury her and protect her in that very honorable ceremony, a traditional funeral that you would see anywhere in the Western world. Now, going back to that point, there were mobs who were scoffing at it, even in that time, wanting to almost heckle the Mother of God. And in that time, those men, those fisher of men, they laid down everything in order to go spread the living word. And over the course of their lifetimes, all facing horrible, terrible deaths, with the exception of John, who was isolated on Cyprus and gave us the book of Revelation, they all died historic and terrible deaths. And look how that message spread throughout the world, and it changed it. And this is that peace pursuit that you are seeing today in civil leadership with God's blessing upon it in Anchorage, Alaska. So stick with us as President Trump, President Putin meeting together at a press conference to decide potentially the end of the Ukrainian conflict. As we pursue peace, we're taking a quick commercial break at 6:10 Eastern. It's 2:10 in Anchorage, Alaska, as the press walks in the room. Stick with us here on Right Side Broadcasting Network.
Welcome to Right Side Broadcasting Network, your trusted conservative news outlet. At RSBN, we deliver the truth when the mainstream media falls short. Since 2015, we've proudly broadcasted every single one of President Trump's iconic MAGA rallies, bringing you the excitement and energy live before anyone else. By watching RSBN, you get an unfiltered front row view of the action on the ground. We interview the crowds to give a voice to millions of Americans just like you. We show you President Trump's speeches in their entirety, free from interruptions and censorship. We cover the stories that matter to you with the integrity and passion you deserve. Thank you for choosing RSBN as your home for America First News. Together, we stand strong, united, and informed. So join us and be part of the right side of history.
Hey y'all, it's Silk from the Diamond and Silk Chit Chat live show. Look, don't forget to check me out right here on RSBN Network. Be sure to watch the show on Right Side Broadcasting Network, and I want you to support Right Side Broadcasting Network. Yes, it's imperative that you do so, okay? I look to see y'all soon. Bye-bye.
allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. You can scan that QR code now, RSBN10. That is the code, easy to remember, for 10% off. This is ivermectin, hydrochloroquine, antibiotics that will save you and yours from bacterial and viral infections, NAD+, and much, much more. 200 essential medications and emergency medical kits, the meds you trust delivered to your door. And welcome back to RSBN, our live desk going into the primetime hour here on Friday evening on the East Coast. It's 6:12 and it is 2:12 in the afternoon in Anchorage, Alaska. So a 4-hour difference and really the halfway meeting point between Washington, D.C. and Moscow, Russia, where President Trump and President Vladimir Putin meeting to discuss peace. And we see the military, also colleagues in the media there taking their seats, prepared to ask a multitude of questions. And maybe we'll have some breaking news here. 80 years ago today, if you've been watching the broadcast, celebrating the victory over Japan Day, which ended World War II, that same kind of peace can come over Russia and Ukraine, ideally in the form of this discussion, and see what advances here in a press conference to be held any moment from now. President Trump and President Putin meeting together in Anchorage, Alaska. Thank you for being with us as we are grateful for our sponsors here on the right side of history. allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. It's ivermectin, mebendazole, now 25% off. Scan that QR code now with the additional code RSBN10 for an additional 10% off of your entire order. Now, it's about bodily autonomy. It's about access to these great medications, including NAD+, methylene blue, and over 200 essential medications, medical emergency kits, antibiotics that you can have for your medical kits at home and also to take on the road in your summer vacations, as we're getting kind of close now to Labor Day. A couple of more weeks to enjoy all of that. School back in session this upcoming week. Auburn University back at it for their regular fall semester. So also a good idea to get all of this life-saving medication to your college students or those students who are away from you and who have left home for perhaps the first time. allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. Really your go-to against bacterial and viral infections, because we know that some pharmacies, they want to close down these life-saving meds. Some doctors won't prescribe them, but all you need is a prescription right here. And no insurance, no red tape, no bureaucracy, just pharmacists who want to take care of you and medical professionals who are concerned about your health and well-being. allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. Now, you guys have heard of the bearskin hoodie. I'm sure you have. It is 60% off right now, and the smart people are perhaps lacking that winter gear, and what a better time to buy it than right now in the summertime. But hey, it's 52 degrees in Anchorage right now. You might be able to use this hoodie. This is waterproof. It's got 10 pockets, the world's only 10-pocket tactical hoodie, in fact, and it's nice and lightweight. Text RSBN to 36912. Plus, it zips right into a heavy storm rain jacket, becoming 100% waterproof. You can use it in pretty much any climate, so you're not scrambling last minute on those big hikes. And I have it right here. It's nice and comfortable, easy to wear and to enjoy. Look at this big hood right here. And yeah, 10 pockets throughout this bad boy. So nice and lightweight, and it will be able to weather the storm, literally. 10-pocket tactical hoodie unlocks 60% now. Scan the QR code now. Text RSBN to 36912. Bearskin, thank you for sponsoring us here on Right Side Broadcasting Network. Something you can use before you head up to Alaska for peace summits such as this between the United States and the Russian Federation. And as Dan Scavino just put out there on X, it's over 2.5 hours now as our friends and colleagues in the media gather in this pursuit of peace. Something that's been long overdue. 3.5 years of this conflict that seemingly might be coming to an end, God willing, in this process, as we are praying for that to come about. Now, we'll have to see, because it's interesting going into this. We've seen 200 plus days of these negotiations, these phone calls, the visit from Vladimir Zelensky, the leader of Ukraine, to the White House, and that not going so well, considering he met with Democrats beforehand who, I guess, told him to bully President Trump or demand this and that. But then President Trump saying, you don't have the cards. And now, just a few weeks ago, President Trump having very successful meetings with Europe, NATO, and also the G7. As you can see, just about every corner of this now full room of media and American and Russian colleagues who are ready to listen to the two leaders and ask questions of what will take place, with Vladimir Zelensky saying that Ukraine will not cede any land, and the Russians saying they want what they have, those ports along those vital sea routes that were once theirs under Soviet rule and prior to Soviet rule, before the Bolshevik Revolution. So again, lines that have been redrawn over the course of 100 years and especially 80 years on today's date of August 15th, 1945, the end of World War II and the victory over Japan. And as President Trump said, we should celebrate these dates as other countries do. The Russians celebrate defeating fascism in World War II. And we should celebrate the Victory over Europe Day on May 8th, and today, victory over Japan. So open a cold one, especially after peace 80 years later today between Russia and Ukraine, potentially. We'll see what happens with these discussions and if follow-up meetings will take place, perhaps with Vladimir Zelensky of the Ukraine as well. We can remember that after that Oval Office meeting, President Trump at the late Pontiff Pope Francis's funeral in Rome, Italy, and Vatican City, the Catholic Church allowing that space and bringing up the chairs, those good Monsignors, to have President Trump and President Zelensky sit down in the corner in that beautiful marbled palace of St. Peter's Basilica to discuss further terms on this ongoing conflict. This has been one of the trickier ones for everyone to help solve here, but we know that President Trump has negotiated the peace with countless countries between the two of them. And in regards to trade and tariffs, that has been a crucial centerpiece of this, as he stated with Cambodia and Thailand. If you continue to fight, we're not going to do any business with you. And we know with Israel and Iran, we have the technology, as the B-52 bomber went over Iranian airspace undetected. We saw one of those beautiful planes over President Putin and President Trump, and President Trump looked up and saluted the military walking on that red carpet at J-Bear and really displayed the fighting power of the 6 branches of the American military at this very important base. Perhaps one of the most important bases, actually is one of the most in the entire world, and especially for the Pacific Command and Fleet to defend us from any threat that might be around the world. So President Trump knows that Mr. Putin reacts to strength, and that was on full display in a very honorable way today at J-Bear, this halfway meeting point, Anchorage, Alaska, between the Russian capital and our capital of Washington, D.C., your federal city, which now has home rule and is going to be much safer and much more beautiful if you're planning a trip there to go see your congressman or to just enjoy the museums and the history in the District of Columbia. They're doing some mic checks there, and we are ready for this press conference. And what is a very historic day, August 15th, a day which will perhaps be remembered for the pursuit of peace between Russia and Ukraine, a conflict which really would have not happened if President Trump was in office at the time, but we know that his living predecessors really screwed up on this. George W. Bush and Barack Hussein Obama in the auto pen could not push back against Putin's wanting to encroach upon sovereign borders. And he did not move an inch when President Trump was in office the first term, and he clearly is wanting to at least talk about peace because President Trump is willing to work towards that. It takes real courage. Any man can start a war, but it takes a person of good character to really have a lasting peace. And you can keep a lasting piece of legacy and history right on your desk with the Trump Force One replica airplane. These are all handcrafted by PatriotActDeals.com. I have one myself. It's limited edition. This last batch, only 100. They're all handcrafted, so this could be it if they sell out, and they will go fast. 20% off now. RSBN 20, that's the code to use. Trump Force One airplane, PatriotAddictDeals.com. Get that limited edition Trump Force One airplane for 20% off. Claim it now today with RSBN 20. And if you're planning to go to Alaska, you might want one of these tactical hoodies. 10 pockets, the world's only 10 pocket. Unlock that 60% now using that QR code or by texting RSBN to 36912. 36912. And most smart people are getting their winter gear right now as they prepare for that. And with 60% off, it makes sense. This great hoodie is 100% waterproof when you zip it into the heavy storm rain jacket as well. So it has layers to it, and it's quite comfortable. I have one right here on display for you. So why not enjoy that? I am the male version of Vanna White. Here is your hoodie. Come check it out. Really comfortable, too. So I would recommend it. Waterproof, great in any condition, especially on those long hikes, especially as you explore the Alaskan wilderness. The world's only 10-pocket tactical hoodie. Unlock 60% now. Text RSBN to 36912. Thank you to Bearskin for your sponsorship on the right side of history. We're getting close to the bottom of the hour, around 6:30 Eastern, and it is 2:30. It's relatively early afternoon still in the great state of Alaska, the 49th state, as we're getting a zoom in on a multitude of media colleagues and friends in what was once known as Seward's Folly. The Secretary of State, William Seward, under the late great President Abraham Lincoln, someone who enjoyed tariffs himself, as Peter Navarro reminded us this week of the great tariff leaders and the economic populace of their time, whether it was Alexander Hamilton, who knew a thing or two about banking, first Treasury Secretary, and also Henry Clay, the Speaker of the House, and someone who ran for president on several occasions, a great leader, United States Senator from the Commonwealth of Kentucky, and the late, great William McKinley, also President Abraham Lincoln. Two men who gave their lives for this great nation, two presidents who did such that. In 1896, in fact, McKinley stating that I am a tariff man, and by tariffs I will stand. And that beautiful mountain right there, about 4 hours by car from Anchorage, but you could see it from many points in the beautiful municipality of Anchorage, Alaska. Mount McKinley, aptly named once again for that great leader. President Trump leading the way on that. And it's nice that he defends history. It's nice that he acknowledges history and doesn't scrape it, under the rug, as the Russian country once did when it was under Soviet control. They wanted to destroy the church, the influence of the Orthodox and the czars of the time, the Bolsheviks, who in fact changed the whole landscape of that great country. But now it has a very, very weak economy. And what has brought Vladimir Putin to the table is President Trump's, not only his ability to discuss and negotiate it, but it is that peace through strength apparatus. It's that toughness that only someone like Putin can respond to. And the fact that President Trump said he has days to figure this out, because he keeps telling me on the phone that he wants peace, and then he hits a nursing home or an elementary school and targets non-military installations and institutions within the Ukraine. It's wrong. It's terrible. And over 1 million people have perished on the Ukrainian and Russian side, whether in the military or civilian. And God willing, it's coming to an end. But President Trump said if the Russian Federation does not respond to any of this and to peace, 100% secondary tariffs slapped on that country. If that happens, it's really very bad for a very, very weak Russian economy at the moment. So as President Trump and Russian President Putin hold a press conference, we will be right there with you. So stick with us here on the prime time Right Side Broadcasting Network live. Let's take a quick commercial break, and we'll be right back with you as the two leaders are continuing to meet with their counterparts.
Welcome to Right Side Broadcasting Network, your trusted conservative news outlet. At RSBN, we deliver the truth when the mainstream media falls short. Since 2015, we've proudly broadcasted every single one of President Trump's iconic MAGA rallies, bringing you the excitement and energy live before anyone else. By watching RSBN, you get an unfiltered front row view of the action on the ground. We interview the crowds to give a voice to millions of Americans just like you. We show you President Trump's speeches in their entirety, free from interruptions and censorship. We cover the stories that matter to you with the integrity and passion you deserve. Thank you for choosing RSBN as your home for America First News. Together, we stand strong, united, and informed. So join us and be part of the right side of history.
Hey y'all, it's Silk from the Diamond and Silk Chit Chat live show. Look, don't forget to check me out right here on RSBN Network. Be sure to watch the show on Right Side Broadcasting Network, and I want you to support Right Side Broadcasting Network. Yes, it's imperative that you do so, okay? I look to see y'all soon. Bye-bye.
allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. You can scan that QR code now, RSBN10. That is the code, easy to remember, for 10% off. This is ivermectin, hydrochloroquine, antibiotics that will save you and yours from bacterial and viral infections, NAD+, and much, much more. 200 essential medications and emergency medical kits, the meds you trust delivered to your door. Welcome back to Right Side Broadcasting Network. The press conference is imminent. We'll bring that right to you so you can see what's been discussed over the course of roughly 2.5 hours. President Trump and President Putin meeting in Anchorage, Alaska, the halfway point between Moscow, Russia, and Washington, D.C. It's 6:30 on the East Coast, 2:30 in Anchorage, Alaska, where I had the privilege of covering local politics. And as I've been encouraging everyone over the two broadcasts, be sure to visit this really blessed area of God showcasing his grandeur and beauty in the mountains and the waters and the wildlife. It's wild to think that so many things can live in such barely cold water, but they prefer it for some reason. So it's quite a place to fish and to hunt and to explore, and not just for the grandparents, for the family as well. Whatever age or stage you're at in life, be sure to visit the 49th state. It is quite a showcase of American exploration as the last frontier. And we will see in moments here President Trump and President Putin. Will they come to peace to end the Ukrainian war? And will that be in terms of what President Zelensky of the Ukraine would like to see as well? There's military in the room. I see Stephen Chung, the special communications director for the President of the United States, special assistant. We also have great new sponsors here on the right side of history, along with all of our colleagues there in the room. It's monetary, gold, wealth, security, preservation. Grab your complimentary presidential gold guide now, 800-476-7790. It is all about gold and silver, these precious metals that make a difference, and they have for 5,000 years of human history. When the dollar or any paper monetary source starts to fail because of inflation or because of big government, gold and silver there for you. RSBN for thegold.com. That's RSBN for thegold.com. Call immediately to discover how you can eliminate your IRA fees permanently. Thank you to Monetary Gold, new sponsor here at the right side of history. And Tax Network USA, if you missed April 15th, do not worry. Settle those back taxes now. It's just 4 months ago, but don't get your head underwater in regards to the IRS. They can come after you. 800-357-1415. Tax Network USA Incorporated, tnusa.com/RSBN, your go-to to settle those back taxes. Thank you for sponsoring us. At RSBN's live desk in the prime time, we are ready, willing, and able to bring you this unbridled access. Thank you to those sponsors and to you, the American people. They're tired of the legacy items, who want a live desk that brings you everything in real time, the entire press conferences. We won't cut away. You're going to see the entire thing tonight on Friday night, on this very important date in world history and American history, not only because of today and the potential to end this bloody 3.5-year conflict, which has divided Americans, which has divided Eastern Europe and Western Asia, and has really had the thoughts and concerns of countless millions across the globe, and a conflict which has resulted in the loss of over 1 million Russians and Ukrainians, both military and civilian. The killing has to stop. President Trump has been consistent, and some there in the audience have pushed him on, oh, which side are you on? And he's always said, I just want the killing to stop, period. I'm not on the Russian side. I'm not on the Ukrainian side. We know that many of them peddling the Russia hoax, and they could be standing up right now and you could be seeing their face, some of them who pushed that hoax that is now been proven to be untrue. And the Steele dossier ruined people's lives and their careers, and Crossfire Hurricane, all brought to you by Barack Hussein Obama and his comrade crew of communists, John Brennan, James Comey, and they just went to 86 Trump. But this president has the protection of God, the prayers of you, the American people, and you restored constitutional common sense governance back into place on November 5th of last year. And thank God you did that, because I think we realized 200 plus days into solving all of these things, he deserves the Nobel Peace Prize. Claudia Tenney in New York calling for it, nominating him, along with other congressmen and senators throughout our country. But it's also being presented to him by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu when they had dinner together at the White House recently, giving him that certificate. The government of Pakistan, also African nations, and countless others calling for President Trump to receive the Nobel Peace Prize, as he solved countless generational and decades-long tribal warfare in Africa with the Congo and Rwanda, to Iran and Israel, Cambodia and Thailand, to India and Pakistan, deterring them from nuclear fallout. I think it's very clearly evident that under Autopen, this entire world was in danger. In fact, it was Vladimir Putin who said he would go the nuclear option because of the incompetence of the ice cream cone-loving Autopen. And it is literally 5 months to the day when we joined President Trump aboard Air Force One, and I asked him about that Autopen question, and that Autopen term seemed to become very common amongst almost all media throughout this great country. And I think we'll find out who that auto pen is with the great investigations underway with people like James Comer from the Commonwealth of Kentucky, who has subpoenaed countless leaders who might have an answer or two regarding Crossfire Hurricane, Russia, the Steele dossier. I'm sure they'll plead the fifth, but it's people like Bill and Hillary Clinton, the neoliberal and neocon agendas that really put our country on the back burner. It bankrupted Detroit. It also bankrolled China and Beijing while the American middle class was being gutted and slowly destroyed and eroded from within. But this president focused on restoring not only security and sovereignty domestically with securing our borders, stopping illegal alien crime, stopping a fentanyl crisis, but also lending his hand at the request of President Putin to pursue peace. So 80 days to the day after the victory over Japan, a day which we should celebrate in addition to May 8th, Victory over Europe Day, the two crucial moments that brought the end of World War II and saved not only the continent of Europe and ultimately the Indo-Pacific, but also the entire world. But now this could be the end of a terrible, horrible, bloody war the last 3.5 years. And it's the Ukrainian and Russian people are truly extraordinary individuals, much like traditional Americans that most of us could probably get along, other than just maybe not knowing one another's languages, but very common, family, God-fearing, good people. And as all these things go on around the world, why not have peace of mind with your health? You can start with allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN by saving 25% off of ivermectin, mebendazole, also using code RSBN10, that's 10, for an extra 10% off. This is 200 essential medications, antibiotics, also the wonderful ivermectin, mebendazole, NAD+, methylene blue, all of these newly scientifically discovered assets against bacterial and viral infections and bodily autonomy. So some doctors won't prescribe this because the PBMs, the insurance companies, have their hooks within those standalone pharmacies. But this online pharmacy focused on care for you, the American people. If you don't have insurance, there's no red tape, there's no bureaucracy. You simply need a prescription to get access to this life-saving medication. So scan that QR code now for ivermectin, mebendazole, going for off of 25% off right now. So I jump on that opportunity. Code RSBN10 for that additional 10% off the entire order. Kalshi.com/RSBN, another great sponsor here at the network that has been following this meeting all day. You still have time to trade and bet on the great questions like what will President Trump say at the press conference after this meeting with President Putin and the Russian Federation? Will President Trump and Putin shake hands for at least 3 seconds? They did on the tarmac for 10 seconds. So at least 71% of you made some money on that trade today. So go quick there now, scan it, watch what's happening in real time with plenty of questions as President Trump, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and Steve Witkoff, the special envoy, face their Russian counterparts and discuss this pursuit of peace and what will be forthcoming from it. Perhaps an everlasting peace today, perhaps a further meeting and a future meeting with President Zelensky of the Ukraine. So as we wait for this Trump-Putin press conference on peace in Anchorage, Alaska, we're pleased to be joined by you, the great American people, at 6:40 Eastern. It's 2:40 in Anchorage, Alaska. I'm Robert McNeely. Welcome to RSBN Prime Time, the live desk that brings you unbridled access to your 45th and 47th Commander-in-Chief, your 50th Vice President, and your 119th Congress, with American and Russian media in the room, also with military on hand, and really a star-studded event today, historical in nature with the red carpet meeting at J-Bear and that B-52 bomber along with F-15s escorting that beautiful plane that really saved the world from the Iranian nuclear threat, on display at JBER, home to our Air Force and all 6 branches of the military, one of the largest bases in the world and most strategic positions in the Western world to look over that Pacific fleet and to ensure that safety is the utmost priority for the Western United States. We look forward to what President Trump and President Putin have to share today after this meeting. They have been roughly together now for about 3 hours. So lots to talk on, lots to discuss, and lots of different moving parts as we approached this meeting, with President Zelensky of the Ukraine initially seeing President Trump, meeting him at the Oval Office at the White House. We remember that did not go so well as Zelensky made his demands and President Trump said, "You don't have the cards." Well, in the meantime, he was on the phone over and over with Putin of Russia, who was claiming to want peace, but then would fire missiles, and even just yesterday, more drones into the Ukraine. But President Trump said in the press gaggle, the roughly 7.5-hour trip from Washington, D.C. to Anchorage, Alaska, that really doesn't help his cause. It really doesn't help. He might have wanted to display strength, but it really ended up hurting Vladimir Putin's point on the way. That was according to President Trump on the press gaggle aboard Air Force One. And we know that this meeting was asked for by President Putin of the Russian Federation. President Trump agreeing, but stating that it had to be done on American soil, as it is now. Once Russian soil, but purchased during the Lincoln administration, once called Seward's Folly. It's probably one of the best decisions since the Louisiana Purchase, to obtain Alaska for 2 cents an acre because of the mineral and oil resources and also the extraordinary wildlife and the leader that it is in global trade, especially with those big jumbo jets that are very used to landing in Anchorage, Alaska, and helps connect the world as you trade goods and packages from that North Post all the way up there. It's like going to the North Pole. In fact, there is a North Pole, Alaska, that they turn into somewhat of a Santa Claus village. So a great place to bring the kids and family members, but more in the summertime. It's a bit cold up there. And that's way, way north of South Alaska, which is Anchorage and where they are right now within the Cook Inlet. Really an extraordinary place in the world where I had the opportunity to cover local politics for a period of time during the COVID years, and lots of friends watching from up there. So hello to you, Alaska, from Auburn, Alabama, the loveliest village on the plains, as we give you everything inside the Beltway and outside the Beltway. Your go-to live desk, RSBN, always here for you. It's RSBN Primetime on this Friday evening, August 15th, 2025, as we await President Trump and President Putin about to hold a press conference on peace. And will that pursuit of peace be a final peace, or will this lead to more discussions? We'll see what they have to say after a relatively long meeting, but worthwhile meeting after both long plane rides from Moscow, Russia, and also Joint Base Andrews outside of Washington, D.C. to JBER in Anchorage, Alaska. So as we wait for that, roughly 7:15 o'clock on the East Coast, and we are approaching the 3 o'clock hour in Anchorage, Alaska. So they are 4 hours behind that East Coast time, just 1 hour behind Pacific time. But it can throw you off, Alaska time. It's only one time zone there, all the way up there next to the Yukon territories in Canada. If you have not visited, I highly encourage it. Beautiful place for hunters and fishermen, but also those who simply enjoy the great outdoors. And they're a hardy bunch, those Alaskans, because I remember going into work in December and January where there's just a lot of darkness within the 24-hour schedule. So roughly the sun will only be out from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. And you can see that people will actually be sledding the kids, like the fifth graders and younger, at 9 in the morning in complete darkness. They learn how to use their resources and be outside every day. And if you're wondering what the press is doing right now, taking pictures there of Steve Witkoff, the special envoy, walking into the room. He was part of that 3-on-3 meeting, as Dan Scavino was mentioning earlier, on hand for this as well. Special assistant to the President of the United States. You know how he got his start? He's almost like a son to President Trump. Dan Scavino, he started as his caddy down in Florida, and they've kept this professional and personal relationship over the course of time, and now he's leading his social media charge and has been over the last decade. And a great guy, Dan Scavino, a great American patriot, as well as these remarkable cabinet members and Secretary of State Marco Rubio, really being the person who has implemented the peace through strength agenda, the America First foreign policy that the MAGA agenda has brought about. And as he's asked that question, as complicated as foreign diplomacy is, what it really boils down to is it pertinent to the security of the United States? Does it have the interest of America? If not, then why even look into it? And this is something that America has boldly led on, working towards peace, because any man can simply start a war and can fire a missile. And as President Kennedy, as President Reagan, and other great leaders throughout our time, especially in the post-World War II world, with these terrible weapons known as nuclear and hydro bombs, and the technologies that we do have now, it takes someone that has that steady hand, that wants to work for peace, that could be the deal maker in chief. President Donald Trump has proven that. And I can remember when he was elected, just the ideas of some people that somehow they were so scared he would start a war. Well, he's been ending wars, and he deserves that Nobel Peace Prize, nominated by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, the government of Pakistan, Congresswoman Claudia Tenney of New York, among others, and the African continent celebrating especially the end of the tribal warfare and the Christian genocide in the Congo and Rwanda. They were fighting the bloodiest conflict since World War II. Over 6 million people died in that. Or Azerbaijan and Armenia. President Trump holding hands together and being a great host country for people who had fought for years and years. The Christian genocide that was ignored by legacy media. This terrible conflict, which we're waiting to see what will be decided on in this momentous occasion of pursuing peace, or the end of the Israel and Iran 12-day war. We are the only country on the known earth who can go into the enemy's territory and be undetected with B-52 bombers, followed by Tomahawk missiles and knockout nuclear sites. That could have been the end to the state of Israel as we know it, who have suffered so much since October 7th of 2023 because someone was too busy eating an ice cream cone on Rehoboth Beach as their wife and their former boss, perhaps the 44th Commander-in-Chief, decided to actually run the show. Thank God that you put President Trump back into office. And the first person to serve in non-consecutive terms since Grover Cleveland did when he was the 22nd and 24th President of the United States, respectively. So you have that. You have Cambodia and Thailand fighting forever. President Trump, after he made that deal with Thailand, told Cambodia, no, we're not going to deal at all. We're not going to trade unless you come to the peace terms. And oh, by the way, I'll cancel Thailand. And he did that all over the phone at Trump Turnberry while meeting with the UK Prime Minister Starmer, while meeting with the European Union President to come to an incredible deal, $600 billion being invested in the United States, and then an additional $720 billion when it comes to energy, because Europe had it backwards. The Germans complained about Russian influence and then the invasion of the Ukraine, but then they were operating with Nord Stream 2, with Russian oil and gas dominating Europe. Well, President Trump said, to hell with that. Let's get a new deal for the two world's largest economies and reopen the Keystone Pipeline that the Autopen canceled. It's all common sense, and We're grateful to bring it all to you here at Right Side Broadcasting Network live, our live desk in the prime time this beautiful Friday evening, August 15th. Now, thank you to our sponsor, MyPillow.com/RSBN, the free shipping sale, the MyCross going for 50% off, and MyPillow bed sheets as low as $24.98, any size, any color. Also, the multi-use MyPillow 2.0 under $10, $9.98. That's better than any lunch deal in town. Call today. Don't delay. It's 800-836-7566. Support Mr. Mike Lindell and Right Side Broadcasting Network. You can shop now at mypillow.com/RSBN. If you like what you see here at the network, please feel free to donate. We're up against Goliath, the legacy corporate media that sometimes doesn't bring you the entire story. They've gotten a little bit better since President Trump has come back, but still, many of them push the Russia hoax narrative. We simply bring it to you to cover all of those rallies out there over the last 10 years, but also as your go-to live desk since the beginning of 2025. So support us right here in that mission at Right Side Broadcasting Network, rsbnetwork.com/donate, or text RSBN to 801-801. You can also do so through the address if you'd like to send a check to 1550 Opelika Road, Suite 6, Box 344, loveliest village on the plains, Auburn, Alabama, 36830. We also have a newsletter, rsbnewsletter.com or rsbnetwork.com/newsletter, so you don't miss a minute of the America First action. As the cabinet members came walking in, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth there, also Caroline Leavitt, the superstar. She's there, as well as Steve Witkoff and Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent walking into the room, all of them in discussions with their Russian counterparts. Today, on this August 15th, it's exactly 80 years after the victory over Japan Day. Their Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Will peace be final here? Will this lead to other meetings? Of course, it's the pursuit of peace. And we see that someone like a Vladimir Putin responds to that through the display of strength at JBER, protecting the Pacific from any threat of the Western United States and the whole of the world with its location in Anchorage, Alaska. You have Russian media on hand. You have American media on hand. You have the red, white, and blue Old Glory and the Russian Federation flag sharing in those same colors. Will peace be decided today? Get those Kalshi trades in now and those bets with all of the questions leading up to it. I'm sure some of you made some big money today with that 10-second handshake on the tarmac at the red carpet, and also the fact that Pete Hegseth and Caroline Leavitt right there. Those are some questions of who was going to be with President Trump on this trip today. It's his national security and press team, the communications staff as well. Ready to hear from these two leaders that have been on opposite ends on many different things and still pursuing arguably what's best for their country. We know President Trump is for sure, but President Putin, somewhat unpredictable. But you need a strong leader like President Trump to deal with someone like Vladimir Putin. And very soon they'll be stepping out onto that stage. We're getting that warning now as the media and colleagues taking it all in this moment. Quite a picture to take on. We're going to toss it there right now. Vladimir Putin and President Donald Trump.
Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, our negotiations have been held in a constructive atmosphere of mutual respect. We had very thorough negotiations that were quite useful. I would like to thank once again my American counterpart for the proposal to travel out here to Alaska. It only makes sense that we've met here because our countries, though separated by the ocean, are close neighbors. So when we've met, when I came out of the plane and I've said, "Good afternoon, dear neighbor, very good to see you, in good health, and to see you alive," I think that is very neighborly. And I think that's some kind words that we can say to each other. We're separated by the Strait of Bering, though there are 2 islands only between the Russian island and the U.S. island. They're only 4 kilometers apart. We're close neighbors, and it's a fact. It's also important that Alaska has to do with our common heritage, common history between Russia and the U.S., and many positive events have to do with that territory. Still, there is tremendous cultural heritage back from the Russian America. For example, Orthodox churches and a lot of more than 700 geographical names of Russian origin. During the Second World War, it was here in Alaska that was the origin of the legendary air bridge for the supply of military aircraft and other equipment under the Lend-Lease program. It was a dangerous and treacherous route over the vast emptiness of ice. However, the pilots of both countries did everything to bring closer the victory. They risked their lives and they gave it all for the common victory. I was just in the city of Magadan in Russia, and there is a memorial there dedicated to the Russian and the U.S. pilots. And there are 2 flags, the U.S. flag and the Russian flag. And I know that here as well there is such a memorial. There is a military burial place several kilometers away from here. The Soviet pilots that buried there who died during that dangerous mission. We're thankful to the citizens and the government of the U.S. for carefully taking care of their memory. I think that's very worthy and noble. We'll always remember other historical examples when our countries defeated common enemies together in the spirit of battle camaraderie and allyship that supported each other and facilitated each other. I'm sure that this heritage will help us rebuild and foster mutually beneficial and equal ties at this new stage, even during the hardest conditions. It is known that there have been no summits between Russia and the U.S. for 4 years, and that's a long time. This time was very hard for bilateral relations, and let's be frank, they've fallen to the lowest point since the Cold War. I think that's not benefiting our countries and the world as a whole. It is apparent that sooner or later, we had to amend the situation to move on from the confrontation to dialogue. And in this case, a personal meeting between the heads of state has been long overdue, naturally under the condition of serious and painstaking work. And this work has been done in general. Me and President Trump have very good direct contact. We've spoken multiple times. We spoke frankly on the phone. And special envoy of the president, Mr. Witkoff, traveled out to Russia several times. Our advisors and heads of foreign ministries kept in touch all the time. And you know fully well that one of the central issues was the situation around Ukraine. We see the strive of the administration and President Trump personally to help facilitate the resolution of the Ukrainian conflict. And his strive to get to the crux of the matter, to understand this history, is precious. As I've said, the situation in Ukraine has to do with fundamental threats to our security. Moreover, we've always considered the Ukrainian nation, and I've said it multiple times, a brotherly nation, however strange it may sound in these conditions. We have the same roots, and everything that's happening is a tragedy for us and terrible wound. Therefore, the country is sincerely interested in putting an end to it. At the same time, we're convinced that in order to make the settlement lasting and long-term, we need to eliminate all the primary roots, the primary causes of that conflict, and we've said it multiple times, to consider all legitimate concerns of Russia and to reinstate a just balance of security in Europe and in the world on the whole. And I agree with President Trump, as he has said today, that naturally the security of Ukraine should be ensured as well. Naturally, we are prepared to work on that. I would like to hope that the agreement that we've reached together will help us bring closer that goal and will pave the path towards peace in Ukraine. We expect that Kiev and European capitals will perceive that constructively and that they won't throw a wrench in the works. They will not make any attempts to use some backroom dealings to conduct provocations to torpedo the nascent progress. Incidentally, when the new administration came to power, bilateral trade started to grow. It's still very symbolic. Still, we have a growth of 20%. As I've said, we have a lot of dimensions for joint work. It is clear that the U.S. and Russian investment and business cooperation has tremendous potential. Russia and the U.S. can offer each other so much in trade, digital, high-tech, and in space exploration. We see that Arctic cooperation is also very possible, and our international context, for example, between the Far East of Russia and the West Coast of the U.S. Overall, it's very important for our countries to turn the page, to go back to cooperation. It is symbolic that not far away from here, at the border between Russia and the U.S., there is a so-called international date line. I think you can step over, literally, from yesterday into tomorrow. And I hope that we'll succeed in that, in political sphere. I would like to thank President Trump for our joint work, for the well-wishing and trustworthy tone of our conversation. It's important that both sides are result-oriented, and we see that the President of the U.S. has a very clear idea of what he would like to achieve. He sincerely cares about prosperity of his nation. Still, he understands that Russia has its own national interests. I expect that today's agreements will be the starting point, not only for the solution of the Ukrainian issue, but also will help us bring back business-like and pragmatic relations between Russia and the U.S. And in the end, I would like to add one more thing. I'd like to remind you that in 2022, during the last contact with the previous administration, I tried to convince my previous American colleague that the situation should not be brought to the point of no return when it would come to hostilities. And I said it quite directly back then, that it's a big mistake. Today, when President Trump saying that if he was the president back then, there will be no war. And I'm quite sure that it would indeed be so. I can confirm that. I think that overall, me and President Trump have built a very good, business-like and trustworthy contact. And I have every reason to believe that moving down this path, we can come, and the sooner the better, to the end of the conflict in Ukraine. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. President. That was very profound, and I will say that I believe we had a very productive meeting. There were many, many points that we agreed on, most of them, I would say, a couple of big ones that we haven't quite gotten there, but we've made some headway. So there's no deal until there's a deal. I will call up NATO in a little while. I will call up the various people that I think are appropriate, and I'll, of course, call up President Zelensky and tell him about today's meeting. It's ultimately up to them. They're going to have to agree with what Marco and Steve and some of the great people from the Trump administration who've come here, Scott and John Radcliffe, thank you very much. But we have some of our really great leaders. They've been doing a phenomenal job. We also have some tremendous Russian business representatives here, and I think everybody wants to deal with us. We've become the hottest country anywhere in the world in a very short period of time, and we look forward to that. We look forward to dealing. We're going to try and get this over with. We really made some great progress today. I've always had a fantastic relationship with President Putin, with Vladimir. We had many tough meetings, good meetings. We were interfered with by the Russia hoax. That made it a little bit tougher to deal with, but he understood it. I think he's probably seen things like that during the course of his career. He's seen it all, but we had to put up with the Russia hoax. He knew it was a hoax, and I knew it was a hoax, but what was done was very criminal. But it made it harder for us to deal as a country in terms of the business and all of the things that we'd like to have dealt with. But we'll have a good chance when this is over. So just to put it very quickly, I'm going to start making a few phone calls and tell them what happened. But we had an extremely productive meeting, and many points were agreed to. There are just a very few that are left. Some are not that significant. One is probably the most significant, but we have a very good chance of getting there. We didn't get there, but we have a very good chance of getting there. I would like to thank President Putin and his entire team, whose faces, who I know in many cases, other than that, whose faces I get to see all the time in the newspapers. You're almost as famous as the boss, but especially this one right over here. But we had some good meetings over the years, right? Good, productive meetings over the years, and we hope to have that in the future. But let's do the most productive one right now. We're going to stop really 5, 6, 7,000, thousands of people a week from being killed, and President Putin wants to see that as much as I do. So, again, Mr. President, I'd like to thank you very much, and we'll speak to you very soon and probably see you again very soon. Thank you very much, Vladimir.
Next time in Moscow.
Oh, that's an interesting one. I don't know. I'll get a little heat on that one, but I could see it possibly happening. Thank you very much, Vladimir. And thank you all. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Wow, and a slight surprise, President Trump nor Vladimir Putin, president of the Russian Federation, not taking questions there, but a significant statement coming from Vladimir Putin that stating what President Trump has been saying for years now. If he was president in that period of time in 2022, yes, there would not have been this invasion, this conflict. And speaking to the AutoPen, that administration allowed it to get to the brink of war between the United States and Russia. And now Vladimir Putin saying, hello, neighbor, hello, friend, even though an ocean separates us. It's very close, Nome, Alaska, to the very eastern point of Russia, the very western tip of our country. There's actually an ice bridge that is created as the large Dolomite and the small Dolomite islands that are in completely different time zones, one in the United States, one in Russia, will actually come together in the winter, created by that ice bridge. And as Vladimir Putin did put it, the Orthodox Church and Russian culture, a huge part of how those first Russians, those native Alaskans, came into that beautiful state, the 49th state, as you are seeing there live in Anchorage, Alaska. President Trump responding, thanking his counterpart, and that he will discuss further with his own team. Also, we'll call up President Zelensky of Ukraine to talk about the terms, and holding some of those specifics, those cards close to his chest, as he is the deal maker in chief, but seems very satisfied after a nearly 3-hour meeting with the Russian president and Vladimir Putin, inviting President Trump to Moscow, the capital of Russia, as you see there, with the 10-second handshake, the red carpet, and the meeting off the planes at J-Bear with the B-52 and the F-15s, the Air Force flying over. A beautiful sign of strength as Air Force One right behind the two leaders, and the Chugach State Park that encompasses Anchorage, Alaska. 2025, this summit, the beginning pursuits of peace, and it's all smiles between President Trump and President Putin, as Mr. Putin put it, that they have quite a business relationship that is one of respect, and one that will lead potentially to the end of this bloody, terrible conflict. So some optimism today on August 15th, 2025. It's not set in stone, but it looks like everything is moving directly toward that. Thank you for viewing today and for being with us at RSBN's live desk, the prime time. If you like what you see, please feel free to donate at RSBN or rsbnetwork.com/donate is your go-to for that. Also, texting RSBN to 801-801. If you like the old school way of doing things, you can submit a check or a money order to 1550 Opelika Road, Suite 6, Box 344. It's the loveliest village in the Plains. And that's Auburn, Alabama, 36830, 1550 Opelika Road, Suite 6, Box 344, Auburn, Alabama, 36830. Thank you for supporting us here on the right side of history. And thank you to allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN right now. 25% off ivermectin, mebendazole, and also these life-saving medications that will make a huge difference in your life. Have them stocked and ready to go against viral and bacterial infections. Take them on the road with you. 200 essential medications, including methylene blue and NAD+, and emergency medical kits, antibiotics that can make a difference. Scan that QR code now, code RSBN10 at allfamilypharmacy.com. No red tape, no bureaucracy, just pharmacists who want to take care of you and your pharmaceutical needs online. So bypass the guys who don't want to do that, and once you take care of your health, make sure you have that good monetary gold, the best in the business. Grab your complimentary presidential gold guide now, and you see President Trump on the front of that. 800-476-7790. Ask how to eliminate those IRA fees permanently at rsbnforthegold.com. Bank of America just announced that the dollar is on the verge of collapse, and whether it's inflation or paper money, we know that it can let you down at the end of the day, and it's your retirement, your savings, your daily paycheck or weekly paycheck that can go down the tube faster than ever. But what can protect you as it has in 5,000 years of human history? Gold and silver, precious metals that can be trusted. Monetary gold can provide that guidance for you today. RSBNforthegold.com, Kalshi.com/RSBN. Who won some money today? What will President Trump say during the press conference? And that was Zelensky. He mentioned that. He talked about NATO and Europe and the counterparts. And there was a 10-second handshake, so a lot of you won some big bucks there. And Pete Hegseth was there, and Caroline Leavitt, along with Marco Rubio, Scott Bessent, Steve Witkoff, and great leadership in America and their Russian counterparts. So I hope some of you could take that into the weekend with taxnetworkusa.com/RSBN. Use that trade money to pay off those back taxes. Visit tnusa.com/RSBN, 800-357-1415. Tax Network USA, your go-to. Settle those back taxes now. And while you're at it, get a limited edition, 1 out of 100 of this batch, handcrafted. I have one myself on my MAGA desk. Trump Force One airplane. Claim 20% off. Use code RSBN20, PatriotAddictDeals.com. And then send in a quick note to Jimmy Kimmel, whose show will probably be canceled soon following The Late Show, Stephen Colbert, and The View on ABC as well, because they just don't have viewership. PatriotAddictDeals.com. Go ahead and reach out to them, and then keep yourself warm. It's only 52 degrees in Anchorage with this bad boy, the world's only 10-pocket tactical hoodie. 60% off now. It's nice and comfortable. It's almost like a blanket, this thing, but it's nice and lightweight. Waterproof as well. Text RSBN to 36912. The world's only 10-pocket tactical hoodie at bearskin.com. So if you're a wilderness lover, as I am, you like to go hunting, fishing, and hiking, especially in that Alaskan wilderness, the last frontier, this is the hoodie that you need. Easy to pack, easy to wear. It'll keep you nice and warm. Thank you to Bearskin, and thank you, the American people, on this Friday night. RSBN Primetime, historic photos, 80 years after the victory over Japan and the end of World War II. Those allies that became rivals when the Soviet Union and the United States battled out that Cold War, now coming together in peace. This Russian Federation that is very weak economically. President Putin admitting today that the war, the invasion, would have never happened if President Trump was in office in 2022. That's a remarkable statement. And that they have a strong business relationship. And President Trump reiterating that and stating that he is appreciative of Vladimir Putin visiting Anchorage, Alaska, and that he has been invited by the Russian Federation president to Moscow, Russia on the next occasion. And President Trump said, we'll have to see about that. Talk to Europe, NATO, and President Zelensky about the next terms. But God willing, this all comes to an end, and the pursuit of peace clearly displayed today, peace through strength at J-Bear with that Alaska 25, the Chugach State Park, and Air Force One right there, as President Putin is all smiles in the beast. Get America First updates and exclusive offers at rsbnetwork.com/newsletter. And thankful for all of the viewership today. and especially our friends in Alaska. And God bless all of you, my friends up there. I got to come visit you very soon. It's where I was able to cover some local politics way back when, well, not too far ago, a few years ago during COVID. It's 7:15 on the East Coast. It is 3:15 in Alaska. I hope you have a wonderful weekend with your friends and family. If there's any breaking news, you can count on Right Side Broadcasting Network and our live desk to be with you in the morning, the evening, in the prime time, and around the clock. In the meantime, on behalf of all my colleagues here at Right Side Broadcasting Network, God bless you, and we'll see you very soon.
Welcome to Right Side Broadcasting Network, your trusted conservative news outlet. At RSBN, we deliver the truth when the mainstream media falls short. Since 2015, we've proudly broadcasted every single one of President Trump's iconic MAGA rallies, bringing you the excitement and energy live before anyone else. By watching RSBN, you get an unfiltered front row view of the action on the ground. We interview the crowds to give a voice to millions of Americans just like you. We show you President Trump's speeches in their entirety, free from interruptions and censorship. We cover the stories that matter to you with the integrity and passion you deserve. Thank you for choosing RSBN as your home for America First news. Together, we stand strong, united, and informed. So join us and be part of the right side of history.
Hey y'all, it's Silk from the Diamond and Silk Chit Chat live show. Look, don't forget to check me out right here on RSBN Network. Be sure to watch the show on Right Side Broadcasting Network, and I want you to support Right Side Broadcasting Network. Yes, it's imperative that you do so, okay? I look to see y'all soon. Bye-bye.
allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. You can scan that QR code now, RSBN10. That is the code, easy to remember, for 10% off. This is ivermectin, hydrochloroquine, antibiotics that will save you and yours from bacterial and viral infections, NAD+, and much, much more. 200 essential medications and emergency medical kits, the meds you trust delivered to your door.